At 12:47 a.m., Logan Hayes opened his door to find the most powerful woman in the city, his untouchable CEO, standing in the pouring rain, mascara streaming down her face like black tears. Vivian Cross had never once shown weakness. Tonight, she was shattered. And when his 6-year-old daughter appeared behind him in her unicorn pajamas, everything changed. One knock, one night, one choice that would destroy careers, ignite forbidden feelings, and force them both to decide: survival or integrity. Watch until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The rain had been falling for 3 hours straight. It came down in sheets, relentless and cold, turning the streets of the quiet suburban neighborhood into rivers of reflected streetlight. The kind of rain that made people grateful for roofs over their heads, for warm beds, for the simple blessing of being inside while the world outside wept. Logan Hayes was not asleep. He sat at his small kitchen table, a cup of coffee gone cold beside him, spreadsheets glowing on his laptop screen. The numbers blurred together after a while: projections, quarterly reports, variance analyses, but he kept working anyway. Sleep had become a luxury he couldn't always afford. Not since Rebecca left. Not since he became everything to a little girl who deserved so much more than a father who worked 60 hours a week just to keep them in a decent apartment. The clock on the microwave read 12:43 a.m. Logan rubbed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. His neck ached. His shoulders were tight with the tension of too many deadlines and not enough help. But tomorrow was Monday, and Monday meant another week at Cross Financial, another week of navigating the minefield that was corporate politics, another week of trying to be invisible enough to keep his job and visible enough to matter. He thought about Emma, asleep in her small bedroom down the hall. 6 years old and already wiser than most adults he knew. She'd asked him tonight, while he tucked her in, why he always looked so tired. "Because grown-ups have a lot of things to think about, sweetheart," he'd told her. "Do you think about happy things?" she'd asked, her brown eyes serious. He'd kissed her forehead and lied. "Always." Now, sitting alone in the dim kitchen, Logan allowed himself a moment of honesty. The truth was, he couldn't remember the last time he'd thought about something happy. His life had become a series of obligations: work, Emma, bills, work, Emma, bills. An endless loop that left no room for anything else. No room for dreams, no room for hope, no room for the kind of future he'd once imagined when he was young and stupid enough to believe that love conquered all. Rebecca had cured him of that particular delusion. The knock came at 12:47 a.m. 3 sharp raps against his front door, loud enough to cut through the sound of the rain, urgent enough to make his heart skip. Logan froze. No one knocked on his door at this hour. No one knocked on his door at any hour, really. He didn't have friends who dropped by. His parents were 3 states away. His neighbors kept to themselves, and he kept to himself. And that was the unspoken agreement of apartment living in a city where everyone was too busy surviving to build community. The knock came again. Harder this time. Logan stood slowly, his mind racing through possibilities. A neighbor with an emergency. A wrong address. Someone dangerous. He moved to the door quietly, grateful that Emma was a heavy sleeper. Through the peephole, he could see a figure standing in the rain, a woman, from the silhouette. She was soaking wet, her arms wrapped around herself, her head bowed. Something about the posture seemed familiar. Logan's hand hesitated on the deadbolt. Every instinct told him to be cautious. It was nearly 1 a.m. He had a child sleeping 20 feet away. Opening the door to a stranger was exactly the kind of decision that led to headlines. But then the woman looked up, and the security light caught her face, and Logan felt the floor drop out from under him. Vivian Cross, his boss, his CEO. The woman who ran a $4 billion financial empire with the precision of a surgeon and the mercy of a glacier. The woman who had never once acknowledged him beyond a curt nod in the elevator. The woman who existed in a different universe entirely, a universe of corner offices and board meetings and decisions that moved markets. She was standing on his doorstep at midnight, drenched in rain, mascara streaking down her face like war paint, looking more human than he'd ever seen her. Logan opened the door. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain roared behind her. Water dripped from her hair, her coat, her trembling hands. She was wearing what looked like an evening gown beneath a designer coat, something silver and elegant, now ruined by the storm. Her shoes were gone. Her bare feet were muddy and scratched. She looked like she'd walked through a battlefield. "Ms. Cross," Logan heard himself say, and his voice sounded strange in his own ears, too calm, too normal, as if his CEO showed up at his apartment in the middle of the night on a regular basis. Vivian's eyes met his. They were red-rimmed, devastated, emptied of the ice that usually armored them. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. The words hung between them, impossible and true. Logan stepped back. "Come inside." She hesitated as if surprised by her own presence here, as if she'd only just realized what she'd done by coming. But then a shiver ran through her, visible, violent, and Logan reached out, gently taking her arm, guiding her over the threshold. The door closed behind her. The silence inside was deafening after the rain. Vivian stood in his small entryway, dripping onto his worn hardwood floors, looking utterly lost. She was shaking, not just from cold, Logan realized, but from something deeper, something that had cracked open inside her and was now spilling out in ways she couldn't control. "I'll get you a towel," he said, "and something dry to wear." He started toward the hallway, but her voice stopped him. "I'm sorry." The words were barely audible. "I shouldn't have come. I don't even know why I—" She broke off, pressing a hand to her mouth as if trying to hold herself together by force. Logan turned back. "When was the last time you ate something?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. She blinked at him, mascara smudging further, and he could see her trying to process a question that had nothing to do with quarterly earnings or shareholder value. I don't remember." "Okay." Logan nodded, falling back on the only thing he knew how to do: take care of people. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit down before you fall down. I'm going to get you dry clothes and make you something warm. And then if you want to talk, we'll talk. If you don't, that's fine too. But you're not going back out in that storm." Vivian stared at him as if he'd started speaking a foreign language. "Why?" she asked. "Why what? Why would you help me? You don't know me, not really. I'm just your boss. I've never even—" She stopped, something flickering across her face. Shame, maybe, or recognition. Logan held her gaze. "You're a person who showed up at my door in the middle of the night, clearly in trouble. The rest of it doesn't matter right now." For a moment he thought she might argue. Vivian Cross was famous for arguing, for challenging, for cutting people down with precision and walking away without looking back. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, all the walls were down. She nodded once, a small surrender, and let him lead her to the couch. Logan moved quickly and quietly, years of single-parent instincts kicking in. He grabbed towels from the hall closet, found an old college sweatshirt and a pair of sweatpants that would be too big but would have to do, and started heating water for tea. Every motion was practiced, efficient, the muscle memory of someone who had learned to manage chaos without waking a sleeping child. When he returned to the living room, Vivian was sitting exactly where he'd left her, staring at nothing. Water pooled around her feet. Her hands were clasped in her lap, white-knuckled, as if she was holding on to herself to keep from flying apart. "Here." He handed her the towels and clothes. "Bathroom's down the hall on the right. Take your time." She took the bundle without looking at it. "This is surreal," she said quietly. "I keep expecting to wake up." "Bad dream?" A laugh escaped her, harsh, broken. "The worst." Logan didn't push. He just pointed her toward the bathroom and went to the kitchen to make the tea. He was filling 2 mugs when he heard the soft padding of feet behind him. But it wasn't Vivian. "Daddy?" Logan turned to find Emma standing in the kitchen doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her hair a wild tangle of brown curls. She was squinting against the light, still half asleep. "Hey, sweetheart." He moved toward her quickly, crouching down to her level. "What are you doing up?" "I heard voices." Emma rubbed her eyes. "Is someone here?" Logan hesitated. There was no good way to explain this, no way to tell a 6-year-old that the person in their bathroom was his boss, a woman so far above them in every social stratum that her presence here defied logic. Before he could answer, the bathroom door opened. Vivian stepped out, transformed. The ruined evening gown was gone, replaced by Logan's oversized sweatshirt and rolled-up sweatpants. Her face was scrubbed clean of makeup, her hair towel-dried and hanging in damp waves around her shoulders. Without the armor of designer clothes and perfect cosmetics, she looked younger, softer, human. She stopped when she saw Emma. For a moment, no one moved. Emma tilted her head, studying the stranger with the unfiltered curiosity of childhood. Then she looked up at her father. "Daddy, who's the sad lady?" The question hit like a punch to the chest, direct and devastating in the way only children can be. Vivian's expression shifted. Something cracked in her composure, a fissure that spread across her features before she managed to contain it. She seemed to struggle for words. "I'm a friend of your daddy's from work." Emma considered this. "Are you sad because of work?" "Emma," Logan said gently, "it's very late. You need to go back to bed." But his daughter wasn't done. She padded across the kitchen floor in her bare feet, walked right up to Vivian, and looked up at her with solemn brown eyes. "When I'm sad," Emma said, "Daddy makes me hot chocolate with the tiny marshmallows. Do you want tiny marshmallows? They make everything better." Vivian's composure shattered. The tears came suddenly, silently, streaming down her face as she pressed a hand to her mouth. She turned away, shoulders shaking, clearly mortified to be falling apart in front of a child she'd never met. Emma tugged on Logan's sleeve. "Daddy, I think she needs the marshmallows really bad." Logan lifted his daughter into his arms. "You're absolutely right, sweetheart. But first, let's get you back to bed. Can you be brave and go back to sleep while I help our friend feel better?" Emma nodded seriously. "I'll be brave." Then over her father's shoulder as he carried her away, she called out, "Don't worry, sad lady. The marshmallows always work." When Logan returned to the living room, Vivian had composed herself enough to sit on the couch, though her hands were still trembling around the mug of tea he'd left for her. The borrowed clothes swallowed her frame. She looked small, fragile. Nothing like the woman who commanded boardrooms and crushed competitors without blinking. Logan sat in the chair across from her. He didn't speak. He'd learned over years of parenting and listening and surviving that sometimes the best thing you could do for someone was simply be present. Let them come to you. The silence stretched. Rain continued to pound against the windows. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. Finally, Vivian spoke. "I got engaged 3 months ago." Logan kept his expression neutral, though the news surprised him. The office rumor mill was usually reliable, but he'd heard nothing about Vivian Cross having a personal life at all, let alone a fiancé. "His name is Marcus. Marcus Chen." Her voice was flat, reciting facts. "We met at a charity gala 2 years ago. He was charming, attentive. My family approved. The board approved. Everything was appropriate." She said the word like a curse. "Tonight was our engagement party. 300 guests. The Waverly Hotel. My mother spent 6 months planning it." Vivian's grip tightened on the mug. "I was so worried about the flowers. Can you believe that? I spent 20 minutes this afternoon arguing with the florist about the shade of white for the centerpieces. 20 minutes. As if it mattered. As if any of it mattered." Logan waited. "I went to find Marcus an hour into the party. He wasn't in the main ballroom. His friends hadn't seen him. I thought maybe he'd gone outside for air. He does that sometimes, when crowds overwhelm him." A bitter laugh. "He told me he found crowds overwhelming. I thought it was endearing. Evidence that underneath the perfect exterior, he was human like me." She looked up, meeting Logan's eyes for the first time since she'd started talking. "I found him in one of the hotel's private lounges. With my best friend. With Naomi." Her voice cracked on the name. They weren't just kissing. It was clear this wasn't new. The way they moved together, the things he was saying to her. This had been going on for a long time. The rain seemed louder in the pause that followed. "I just stood there," Vivian continued, "in my $8,000 dress, with my $300,000 engagement ring, watching my entire future collapse. And do you know what Marcus said when he finally noticed me?" Logan shook his head. He said, "Viv, let's talk about this like adults. Like I was being unreasonable. Like I was the problem." Her jaw tightened. Then Naomi, my best friend since college, the woman I asked to be my maid of honor, the person I trusted with everything, she looked at me and said, "I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but honestly, Marcus and I have something real. You should be happy for us." Jesus. I walked out, didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't get my coat, just walked. Vivian's voice had gone hollow. I've been walking for hours, in the rain, in this dress. I lost my shoes somewhere around 10th Street. I didn't even notice until my feet started bleeding. Logan looked down involuntarily. Her feet were tucked beneath her, hidden by the sweatpants, but he remembered the mud and scratches he'd seen at the door. "Why here?" he asked quietly. Not accusatory, just curious. Vivian was silent for a long moment. When she answered, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because you're the only person who ever told me the truth." Logan's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" 6 weeks ago. The Meridian acquisition. Vivian set down her mug, hugging her knees to her chest like a child. Everyone on my team was telling me what I wanted to hear, green lights across the board. But the numbers didn't make sense to me. Something felt off. I asked for additional analysis, and everyone just parroted the same optimistic projections. Logan remembered that meeting. He'd been a junior financial analyst at the time, barely visible in the hierarchy, but he'd been assigned to compile the supporting data, and what he'd found had troubled him. "You pulled me into your office," Vivian continued. "I'd never even spoken to you directly before. You were just a name on a report. But I asked you point blank if you thought the acquisition made sense, and you looked me in the eye and said that the projections were built on assumptions that didn't hold up under stress testing," Logan finished. "That if we proceeded, we'd be overpaying by at least 30% and exposing the company to significant liability. Everyone else in that room wanted to impress me. You wanted to tell me the truth, even though it could have cost you your job." "I was terrified," Logan admitted. "I went home that night convinced I'd be fired by morning. Instead, I killed the deal." Vivian's eyes met his. "Saved the company nearly $400 million. And do you know what I noticed about you after that?" Logan shook his head. "You never mentioned it. Never tried to leverage it. Never asked for credit or promotion or anything. You just went back to your cubicle and kept doing your job like nothing had happened." She paused. "I've been watching you ever since. You're the only person in that building who doesn't want anything from me." The confession hung in the air between them. "Everyone wants something from me," Vivian said, her voice cracking. "Marcus wanted my money and my connections. Naomi wanted my life. My board wants my compliance. My family wants my success. And I've given and given and given until there's nothing left. And tonight, when everything fell apart, I realized I didn't have a single person I could call. Not one. Because every relationship I have is transactional. Every single one." She looked at him with devastated eyes. "Except you. You never asked for anything. You just saw me. The real me. For 5 minutes in a boardroom, you treated me like a person instead of a position. And when I was walking in the rain, bleeding and broken and lost, you were the only person I could think of. The only one who might not see showing up at his door as an opportunity or a weakness to exploit." Logan didn't know what to say. He was a single father, a junior analyst, a man who lived paycheck to paycheck and measured success in whether Emma's shoes still fit. The idea that someone like Vivian Cross, someone who could buy his entire apartment building without noticing the expense, would see him as special was beyond comprehension. "I'm sorry," Vivian said, misreading his silence. "This was a mistake. I've made everything uncomfortable. I should go." "No." The word came out firm, certain, and it surprised them both. "You came here because you needed somewhere to fall apart," Logan said. "So fall apart. I'm not going to judge you for being human, and I'm not going to try to capitalize on it. You needed a safe place. You found one. That's enough." Vivian stared at him for a long moment, and then, slowly, the tension began to drain from her shoulders. The rigid posture she carried like armor softened. She leaned back into the couch cushions, looking exhausted but no longer quite so desperate. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything." "What happened to Emma's mother?" It was Logan's turn to look away. The question touched old wounds, scarred over but never fully healed. "She left," he said simply. when Emma was 2. She said she wasn't cut out for motherhood, wasn't cut out for ordinary life. She wanted adventure, excitement, freedom. A toddler and a husband who worked 70 hours a week didn't fit into that vision. She just abandoned you? She sends birthday cards sometimes, never on Emma's actual birthday, always 3 or 4 days late. I think she puts them in her calendar wrong and she never cares enough to fix it. Logan shrugged, a gesture that held more pain than he'd ever admit. Emma doesn't remember her, which I suppose is a blessing. She can't miss what she's never really known. That's terrible. It's life. Logan met her eyes. We all have our wounds. The question is whether we let them define us or whether we use them to become something better. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Then, how do you do it? Raise a child alone? Work full-time? Keep going when everything is stacked against you? I don't have a choice, Logan said. Emma depends on me. When someone depends on you, you find reserves you didn't know you had. You do impossible things because the alternative is unthinkable. I wish I had something like that, Vivian whispered. Something worth fighting for. Someone who needed me to be better. Maybe you will. Someday. Their eyes met. Something shifted in the air between them. An awareness, a recognition, something unspoken that made Logan's heart beat faster. Vivian leaned forward slightly. Her damp hair fell across her face. Her lips parted as if to speak. The moment stretched, charged, dangerous. And then Vivian pulled back, something like panic flickering across her features. I should sleep, she said too quickly. You're right. It's late. I'm not thinking clearly. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have— The couch is comfortable, Logan interrupted, sensing her need to retreat. I'll get you blankets and a pillow. We can figure out everything else in the morning. Relief and disappointment warred on Vivian's face. You're sure? I've already imposed so much. You knocked on my door. That means something. Logan stood, suddenly aware of how close they'd been sitting, how intimate the conversation had become. Get some rest. Tomorrow's a new day. He gathered blankets from the hall closet, arranged them on the couch with the care he used when setting up Emma's sickbed, and plugged in a nightlight near the bathroom so she could find her way if needed. When he turned to say goodnight, Vivian was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Logan? Yeah? Thank you for not asking questions I couldn't answer, for not making this into something complicated. He nodded once. Good night, Vivian. Her name felt foreign in his mouth. Too personal, too real. She'd always been Ms. Cross, CEO, boss, an untouchable figure in expensive suits making decisions that affected thousands of lives. Tonight, she was just Vivian, a woman who had lost everything and somehow found her way to his door. As he walked to his bedroom, Logan couldn't shake the feeling that tonight had changed something fundamental. That the knock at midnight had opened a door that couldn't be closed again. He just didn't know yet whether what lay on the other side was salvation or destruction. Sleep came fitfully. Logan lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain ease from a roar to a whisper. His mind kept returning to the woman on his couch, to the vulnerability he'd seen in her eyes, to the moment when she'd leaned toward him and everything had gone electric. He was playing with fire. He knew that. Vivian Cross was his boss. Not just his immediate supervisor, but the CEO of the entire company. The power differential between them was astronomical. Whatever had happened tonight, whatever connection they'd felt, it was born of crisis and circumstance. By morning, she'd be herself again, the Ice Queen, the boardroom gladiator. And he'd be just another employee, barely worth her notice. But even as he told himself this, even as he tried to rebuild the walls that had crumbled so quickly, Logan couldn't shake the image of her standing in his doorway, drenched, broken, human. He'd spent 3 years working at Cross Financial, 3 years watching Vivian from a distance, admiring her intelligence, her competence, her ability to command rooms full of powerful men with nothing more than the force of her presence. He'd never thought of her as anything but intimidating. Tonight, he'd seen something else, something real. And it had awakened feelings he'd thought were dead, feelings he'd buried along with his marriage, along with his dreams, along with the version of himself who had believed in love. Dangerous feelings. Around 3 a.m, he heard it, soft crying from the living room, muffled as if she was trying to hide it in a pillow. The sound broke something in him. He didn't go to her. She hadn't asked for comfort, and barging in would only embarrass them both. But he lay awake, listening, wishing he could do something more than just provide a roof and dry clothes. Eventually, the crying stopped. Eventually, the rain stopped too. And eventually, exhaustion dragged Logan into a dreamless sleep. Morning came gray and quiet. Logan woke at 6, internal alarm honed by years of early wake-ups with Emma. He lay still for a moment, wondering if last night had been some kind of fever dream. Then he heard movement in the kitchen and knew it was real. He got up, dressed quickly in jeans and a t-shirt, and made his way down the hall. Vivian was standing at the stove, making scrambled eggs. She'd found his coffee maker and had a pot brewing. She was still wearing his sweatshirt and sweatpants, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she looked comfortable, like she belonged there. The sight stopped him in his tracks. "I hope you don't mind," she said without turning around. "I couldn't sleep anymore, and I wanted to do something useful." "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." She finally looked at him, and there was something different in her expression, softer, more open. "It's been a long time since I cooked for anyone. Usually I just order in, eat at my desk, skip meals entirely, but this morning I thought—" She shrugged. It seemed like the right thing to do. Logan moved to the coffee maker, poured himself a cup, and leaned against the counter. The domesticity of the scene was surreal. Vivian Cross, CEO, scrambling eggs in his kitchen, like something out of an alternate universe. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Horrified," she admitted. "About last night, about showing up here, about falling apart in front of you and your daughter and probably traumatizing you both for life." "Emma's not traumatized. She asked about you this morning." Vivian's hand stilled on the spatula. "She did?" "First thing she said when she woke up was, 'Is the sad lady still here? Did she get the marshmallows?'" A fragile smile crossed Vivian's face. "She's something special." "She really is." They worked in companionable silence for a few minutes, Vivian finishing the eggs, Logan setting out plates and glasses, both of them moving around each other with a comfort that belied their brief acquaintance. "I called my assistant this morning," Vivian said as they sat down at the small kitchen table. "Had her cancel my appointments for the day. I told her I was ill. First sick day I've taken in. I can't remember how long. Probably a good call. You need time to process." "Do I?" Vivian pushed her eggs around on her plate. "Or do I need to get back out there and face the wreckage before it destroys everything I've built?" "What do you mean?" She set down her fork. "By now Marcus and Naomi have undoubtedly spun their own version of events. My mother is probably fielding calls from 300 confused guests. The press will pick it up by noon, failed engagement of Vivian Cross, business prodigy, and apparent romantic failure. And once the story gets out, the vultures circle," Logan finished. "The board has been looking for an excuse to oust me for years. They think I'm too aggressive, too uncompromising, too female if we're being honest about it." Vivian's jaw tightened. "This gives them ammunition, personal scandal, evidence of poor judgment. They'll use it to undermine my authority, and once that starts—" Logan understood. Corporate politics was its own kind of battlefield, and the rules were brutal. Perceived weakness was an invitation for attack. And Vivian, whatever else she was, had enemies. People who envied her success, resented her power, wanted what she had. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I don't know." The admission seemed to cost her. "Usually I have a plan. 10 steps ahead, contingencies for every scenario. But last night, I wasn't planning, I was just surviving. And now I'm sitting in your kitchen in borrowed clothes, eating scrambled eggs, and I have no idea what comes next." Before Logan could respond, small footsteps pattered down the hall. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her unicorn pajamas, her eyes widening with delight when she saw Vivian. "You're still here!" Emma ran across the kitchen and stopped in front of Vivian's chair, beaming. "Did you get the marshmallows? Are you still sad?" Vivian's face transformed. All the tension, all the worry, melted away as she looked at the little girl. "I did get the marshmallows," she said. "Your daddy made me hot chocolate last night after you went to bed. And you were right, they helped." Emma nodded sagely. "They always do." "What's your name?" Daddy says it's rude to call people sad lady, but I didn't know what else to call you. My name is Vivian. Viv-E-Ann. Emma tried the name out, syllable by syllable. That's pretty, like a flower. Thank you, Emma. Your name is pretty too. I know, Daddy picked it. He said it means whole or universal or something big like that. He wanted me to feel like I could be anything. Emma climbed into her own chair and reached for a piece of toast. Are you going to stay for breakfast? We have the tiny marshmallows. I can show you. Vivian looked at Logan, a question in her eyes. You're welcome to stay, he said. Both of you could probably use the company. And so, in the gray light of a Sunday morning after the worst night of her life, Vivian Cross sat at a worn kitchen table in a tiny apartment, eating breakfast with a single father and his daughter, surrounded by the smell of coffee and eggs, and something that felt dangerously like hope. They didn't talk about the future. They didn't talk about the past. They just existed together, in a moment outside of time. Emma chattered about her school and her friends and her dreams of being a veterinarian astronaut. Because somebody needs to take care of space dogs, Daddy. Vivian listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at the right moments, treating the little girl's fantasies with the respect they deserved. And Logan watched them both, his heart doing something complicated in his chest. This was dangerous. He knew that. This woman was his boss. She was vulnerable. She was going through trauma. Getting attached to her, letting her get attached to his daughter, was a recipe for disaster. But watching Emma reach across the table to show Vivian how to stack tiny marshmallows into a pyramid, watching Vivian's face light up with unguarded joy, Logan couldn't bring himself to stop it. Some moments were worth the risk. The moment shattered at 10:47 a.m., when Vivian's phone buzzed with a message that drained all the color from her face. What is it? Logan asked, seeing her expression change. It started. Her voice was flat, dead. The board has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning, and according to my source, they're discussing a vote of no confidence. Based on what? Your engagement falling apart? Based on concerns about leadership stability and personal judgment. Vivian set down her phone, her hands trembling slightly. They're using last night as an excuse, but this has been building for months. They've just been waiting for an opening. Logan's stomach tightened. What happens if they vote you out? They can't fire me outright. My contract has protections, but they can strip my authority, remove me from day-to-day operations, essentially make me a figurehead while they install their own people. Vivian stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Everything I've built, everything I've worked for, gone, because I made the mistake of trusting the wrong people. Emma, sensing the shift in atmosphere, had gone quiet. She looked between the two adults with worried eyes. Daddy, is Vivian sad again? Logan met his daughter's gaze. Sometimes grown-ups have problems that are hard to fix, sweetheart, but it's going to be okay. He wished he believed it. Vivian turned from the window. I need to go. I need to call my lawyers, reach out to board members I trust, get ahead of this somehow. She was already moving toward the door, the warmth of breakfast evaporating as corporate survival instincts kicked in. Thank you for last night, for everything. She stopped, struggling. We saved each other some food, Emma piped up. In case you get hungry later, Daddy said you forgot to eat yesterday. Vivian's composure cracked just for a second. She knelt down to Emma's level. Thank you, Emma. That's very kind. Will you come back for the marshmallows? The question hung in the air. Logan saw Vivian's face flicker through a dozen emotions. Longing, fear, uncertainty, something that looked almost like hope. I'd like that, Vivian said finally. If your daddy says it's okay. Emma turned to Logan with pleading eyes. Daddy, can she come back? Logan looked at Vivian, at the woman who held his career in her hands, who had shown up broken at his door, who had somehow become entangled with his daughter in the space of a single morning. Any time, he said, and meant it. Vivian smiled, a real smile, fragile but genuine. Then she was gone, back into the rainy morning, back to the corporate war that awaited her. And Logan stood in his doorway with his daughter's hand in his, wondering what the hell he'd just gotten himself into. The rest of Sunday passed in a haze. Logan went through the motions, playing with Emma, doing laundry, preparing for the week ahead, but his mind kept returning to Vivian, To the way she'd looked in his borrowed clothes, to the sound of her crying at 3 in the morning, to the moment at breakfast when she'd laughed at one of Emma's jokes and he'd felt something shift in the universe. He told himself it meant nothing. She was his boss. She was in crisis. She'd been grateful for kindness and comfort, nothing more. Whatever connection they'd felt was circumstantial, born of vulnerability and late nights and the strange intimacy of shared trouble. By tomorrow, she'd be Vivian Cross again. Ice Queen. CEO. Untouchable. And he'd be Logan Hayes, single father, junior analyst, nobody. But even as he repeated this to himself, even as he tried to build walls against the feelings threatening to overwhelm him, Logan couldn't shake the memory of her standing in his doorway, drenched, broken, looking at him like he was the only solid thing in a world that had turned to quicksand. That night, after Emma was asleep, Logan sat alone in his kitchen and allowed himself one moment of honesty. He didn't want Vivian Cross to be untouchable anymore. He wanted her to keep coming back for the marshmallows. Monday morning arrived with ruthless efficiency. Logan dropped Emma at school, kissing her forehead and promising to pick her up on time. Then he drove to Cross Financial, his stomach tight with anxiety he couldn't name. The building was buzzing when he arrived, the kind of energy that meant something big was happening. Whispered conversations in hallways, clusters of people checking their phones, sidelong glances that stopped when anyone approached. Logan made his way to his cubicle, trying to ignore the stares, but by 9 o'clock it was clear he couldn't avoid the storm. "Did you hear?" His coworker Melissa appeared at his desk, eyes wide with barely contained excitement. "The board called an emergency meeting this morning. Vivian Cross is on the chopping block." Logan kept his face neutral. "What happened?" "Some kind of scandal at her engagement party. The fiancé cheated on her or something. It's all over the society pages." Melissa leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Between you and me, I always knew she'd crack eventually. No one can be that perfect. She had to be hiding something." It took every ounce of self-control Logan possessed, not to defend Vivian. Not to tell Melissa that perfect wasn't the same as invulnerable. That the woman everyone gossiped about had sat in his kitchen eating eggs with his daughter. That she was human in ways this building would never understand. Instead, he just nodded and turned back to his screen. The day crawled by in a fog of tension. Logan tried to work, but his attention kept drifting to his phone, waiting for news. Was the board voting right now? Had they stripped her authority? Was Vivian okay? At 2 o'clock, his direct supervisor appeared at his cubicle. "Hayes, boardroom, now." Logan's blood ran cold. "What? Why?" "I don't ask questions. I deliver messages. Move." The walk to the executive floor felt endless. Logan's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Had someone seen Vivian at his apartment? Were there security cameras he hadn't noticed? Was he about to be fired for inappropriate conduct with the CEO? The boardroom doors opened, and nothing could have prepared him for what he found inside. 12 board members sat around the massive conference table. At the head, in the CEO's chair, sat Harold Morrison, Vivian's chief rival on the board, a man whose ambition was legendary and whose ethics were questionable at best. Vivian was nowhere to be seen. "Mr. Hayes?" Morrison gestured to an empty chair. "Please, sit down." Logan sat, every sense on high alert. "I assume you're wondering why you're here," Morrison continued. "Let me be direct. We're aware of your role in stopping the Meridian acquisition last year. Your analysis was impressive. It demonstrated judgment and integrity that we value highly. Thank you, sir. We're also aware that you have a relationship with Vivian Cross." Logan's heart stopped. "We're not here to interrogate you about the nature of that relationship," Morrison said, holding up a hand. "What executives do in their personal time is their own affair, so to speak. But we do need to discuss its implications." Another board member, Karen Whitfield, Chief Financial Officer, spoke up. "As of this morning, Vivian Cross has been placed on administrative leave pending a review of her leadership. This is standard procedure when questions arise about an executive's judgment or stability. With Ms. Cross temporarily removed, we need someone to step into several key roles," Morrison continued. "Someone with financial acumen, someone with proven integrity, someone the CEO, former CEO, trusts." The room waited, Logan felt sick. "We'd like to promote you, Mr. Hayes," Morrison said. "Effective immediately. You'll be moved to a senior analyst position with executive access and significantly increased compensation. Consider it a reward for your good work." Something about the offer felt wrong. Too smooth, too convenient. "What exactly would you need from me?" Logan asked carefully. Morrison smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Simply your cooperation, your insights into the company's operations, and perhaps," he slid a document across the table, "your signature on a few routine statements." Logan picked up the document. As he read, his blood turned to ice. It was a formal accusation, a statement claiming that Vivian Cross had engaged in inappropriate behavior, made unprofessional advances, created a hostile work environment. Every line was a lie. Every word was poison. "You want me to sign this?" "We want you to tell the truth," Morrison said, "about your experiences with Ms. Cross, about the kind of leader she really is." "This isn't the truth. This is fabrication." "It's your word against hers." Morrison leaned forward. "And Mr. Hayes, think carefully about what you're saying. You're a single father with a young daughter. You live paycheck to paycheck. One wrong move and you lose everything. Your job, your insurance, your ability to provide for your child." The threat hung in the air, undisguised. "Sign the statement," Morrison continued, "and you secure your future. Refuse, and, well, we'll be forced to reevaluate your position here entirely." Logan stared at the document, at the lies printed in crisp black type, at the signature line waiting for his betrayal. He thought about Emma, about her school, about the medical bills from last year's ear infection, about the shoes she'd need next month and the birthday party she wanted, and the 1,000 small expenses that kept him up at night. He thought about Vivian, about the sound of her crying, about the way she'd looked at Emma with such wonder, about the warmth in her voice when she'd said, "I'd like that." And he made his choice. "No." Morrison's expression hardened. "Excuse me?" "I said no." Logan pushed the document back across the table. "I won't sign something that isn't true, and I won't help you destroy someone who doesn't deserve it." "You're making a mistake, Mr. Hayes." "Maybe." Logan stood up. "But at least I'll be able to look my daughter in the eye tomorrow." He walked out of the boardroom without looking back. And as the doors closed behind him, he knew that everything was about to change. The elevator doors closed behind Logan, and for a long moment he simply stood there, watching the numbers descend, feeling the weight of what he'd just done settle into his bones. He had refused the board. He had defied Harold Morrison. He had thrown away his career to protect a woman who might not even know he existed after today. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. His reflection stared back at him from the polished metal doors, pale and tired and somehow more alive than he'd felt in years. When the elevator reached the ground floor, Logan walked straight to his car. He couldn't go back to his cubicle. Couldn't sit there pretending to work while the board plotted their next move. Couldn't face Melissa's gossip or his supervisor's suspicious glances or the suffocating weight of corporate politics. He drove without thinking, muscle memory guiding him through familiar streets until he found himself parked outside Emma's school. It was only 2:30. Pickup wasn't until 3:15. But he sat there anyway, watching children play through the chain-link fence, letting the sight of their innocent joy wash over him like a balm. What had he done? The question repeated itself over and over as he watched a little girl chase a soccer ball across the playground. He had just torpedoed his entire career. He had made an enemy of one of the most powerful men in the company. He had chosen integrity over survival, and while that sounded noble in theory, Noble didn't pay the rent. Noble didn't cover Emma's school fees. Noble didn't put food on the table or keep the lights on or provide the stability his daughter needed. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Logan stared at it for a long moment before answering. "Hello?" "Mr. Hayes." A woman's voice, crisp and professional. "Please hold for Ms. Cross." His heart stuttered. A click, a pause, and then, "Logan." Her voice was different than it had been yesterday, stronger, more controlled, but underneath the professional veneer, he could hear something fragile, something that remembered standing in his kitchen with tiny marshmallows and borrowed sweatpants. "I heard what happened in the boardroom," Vivian said. "I have people who keep me informed." Then you know I didn't sign anything. I know. A pause. Why? The question was simple. The answer was not. Because it wasn't true, Logan said finally. And because you didn't deserve to be destroyed by lies just because some power-hungry executive saw an opportunity. Silence on the line. He could hear her breathing, could almost see her standing by some window in some expensive space, trying to make sense of a world where someone had chosen her over self-interest. You understand what this means for your career? Vivian said. It wasn't a question. I understand Morrison is going to make my life hell. I understand I'll probably be pushed out within the month. I understand I just made the most financially irresponsible decision of my life. Logan watched a teacher guide students toward the school building as the end of recess bell rang. But I also understand that I have to look at myself in the mirror every morning, and I have to face my daughter every night, and I couldn't do either of those things if I'd signed that document. Another pause. Longer this time. I don't know what to say, Vivian admitted. I've spent my entire career building walls to protect myself, learning who could be trusted, which was almost no one, assuming everyone had an angle because everyone always did. Her voice cracked slightly. And then you don't fit. I don't know what to do with someone who doesn't fit. You don't have to do anything with me. I made my choice. It had nothing to do with expecting something in return. That's exactly what I mean. She almost laughed. That's exactly why you don't fit. The school bell rang in the distance. Children began streaming out of the building, backpacks bobbing, voices raised in the chaotic joy of freedom. I have to go, Logan said. I'm picking up Emma. Logan, wait. Something urgent in her voice. Don't go home tonight, not right away. Why? Because Morrison doesn't take rejection well. And because I want to help you, but I need time to figure out how. Can you trust me? It was a strange question coming from a woman who'd shown up at his door less than 48 hours ago. A woman who'd been a stranger, then a refugee, then something else entirely, something he couldn't name. I trust you, he said, and meant it. There's a cafe on Maple Street near the old theater, the Rusty Anchor. Meet me there at 7. Bring Emma if you need to. I'll arrange a private room. Vivian, please. The word was soft, vulnerable. I need to see you, both of you. I need to know that what happened this weekend was real. Logan watched his daughter emerge from the school building, her brown curls bouncing as she scanned the pickup line for his car. We'll be there, he said. He hung up just as Emma spotted him and broke into a run. The afternoon passed in a strange suspension, hours that felt both endless and instantaneous. Logan took Emma to the park because she asked, and because he needed the normalcy. Needed to push his daughter on the swings and watch her climb the jungle gym and pretend that everything wasn't about to change. She chattered about her day as children do, about the substitute teacher who couldn't pronounce anyone's name correctly, about her best friend Maya's new light-up sneakers, about the caterpillar they'd found on the playground that was probably going to turn into a butterfly soon. Logan listened and nodded and asked questions at the right moments, but his mind kept drifting to 7 o'clock. To a cafe on Maple Street. To a woman who didn't fit into his life but somehow fit perfectly into the empty spaces he'd been trying to ignore. Around 5, they went home. Logan made dinner, simple spaghetti with sauce from a jar because that's what single fathers did when their minds were elsewhere. Emma ate enthusiastically and asked if she could have ice cream after, and Logan said yes because he couldn't think of a reason to say no, and because some part of him felt like they both deserved something sweet in the middle of so much uncertainty. At 6:30, he told Emma they were going to meet a friend for dessert. What friend? Emma asked, already bouncing with excitement. Is it Maya? Is it someone from your work? Is it... She stopped, eyes widening. Is it Vivian? Logan blinked. How did you know? Because you got that look on your face, the soft look, like when you're thinking about happy things. Emma grinned. You told me you always think about happy things. I didn't believe you, but maybe now it's true. Out of the mouths of babes. The Rusty Anchor was exactly the kind of place Logan would never have found on his own. Tucked between an antique shop and a used bookstore, it had a worn wooden sign and windows fogged with warmth, and the kind of shabby chic aesthetic that suggested either authenticity or very expensive interior design. Inside, the walls were covered with maritime memorabilia. The lighting was soft and golden, and the whole place smelled like coffee and cinnamon and something deeper, something that whispered of safety and secrets. A young woman with purple-streaked hair met them at the door. "Mr. Hayes, we've been expecting you. Right this way." She led them through the main room, past clusters of mismatched furniture and patrons absorbed in conversations and books and laptop screens, to a door in the back marked private. Behind it was a small room with a single table, 2 armchairs, and a window seat piled with cushions. Vivian was already there. She looked different than she had in his borrowed clothes, more polished, more composed, wearing a simple cashmere sweater and dark jeans that somehow cost more than Logan's entire wardrobe. But there were shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide, and when she saw them, her careful composure flickered. "You came," she said. "We brought marshmallows," Emma announced, holding up a plastic bag triumphantly. "In case you need more. Daddy said we should just in case." Vivian's face transformed. The tension melted away, replaced by something soft and wondering, as if she couldn't quite believe this child was real. "That was very thoughtful," she said. "Should we order hot chocolate to go with them?" "Yes!" Emma was already climbing onto the window seat, arranging cushions around herself with the territorial efficiency of a small queen establishing her court. "And can I have whipped cream? The real kind, not the fake kind that tastes like clouds, but the wrong clouds." Logan looked at Vivian over his daughter's head, a question in his eyes. "The wrong clouds?" Vivian asked, clearly charmed. "You know, the clouds that look fluffy, but when you touch them, they just go poof, and there's nothing inside. Real whipped cream has something inside. It's substantial." Emma nodded sagely. "That's a vocabulary word. Substantial. It means it has substance." "I'm impressed," Vivian said. "That's excellent vocabulary." "I read a lot." Emma shrugged modestly. "Daddy says books are windows into other worlds. I've looked through a lot of windows." They ordered hot chocolate with substantial whipped cream and a pot of tea for the adults because Vivian looked like she needed something warm but not sweet, and a plate of pastries because Emma's eyes went wide at the description of the chocolate croissants. For the first half hour, they didn't talk about anything serious. They talked about Emma's school and her dreams of being a veterinarian astronaut, and her elaborate theory about why cats always landed on their feet, but toast always landed butter side down, and what would happen if you strapped toast to a cat's back. They talked about books. Vivian, it turned out, had read voraciously as a child, escaping into fantasy worlds to avoid the pressure of being a cross, and she still remembered the exact moment she'd first encountered Narnia. Logan watched them together, his daughter, and this woman who had no business being in their lives, and felt something shift in his chest. Something that had been locked away for years, something he thought Rebecca had killed when she walked out the door. Hope. Eventually, Emma's energy began to flag. The excitement of the day, combined with sugar and warmth and comfort, worked their usual magic. She curled up on the window seat with her head on a cushion, and within minutes her breathing had slowed to the steady rhythm of sleep. Vivian watched her for a long moment. "She's extraordinary." "I know," Logan said simply. "You've done an incredible job with her, raising her alone, working full-time, keeping her curious and kind and confident." Vivian's eyes moved from Emma to Logan. "I don't know how you do it. I don't have a choice." "That's what you said before. But you do have choices. You could have taken shortcuts, could have parked her in front of a television instead of reading to her, could have let her become bitter or scared after her mother left. Instead, you gave her this." She gestured at the sleeping child, this wholeness, this trust in the world. Logan didn't know how to respond to that. He wasn't used to being seen this clearly, wasn't used to someone acknowledging the invisible labor of single parenthood. "What happened after I left the boardroom?" he asked instead, redirecting to safer ground. "You said Morrison doesn't take rejection well." Vivian's expression hardened. "After you walked out, he apparently went on quite a rant, called you naive, foolish, ungrateful, said you'd regret your decision by the end of the week." "I don't doubt it." He also put out some feelers, discreet inquiries about your personal life, your finances, your vulnerabilities. Vivian's voice was steady, but he could see anger flickering beneath the surface. He's looking for leverage, something to force you to change your mind, or failing that, something to discredit you entirely. Let him look. Logan met her eyes. I've got nothing to hide. Everyone has something to hide, Logan. That's the first lesson of corporate warfare. The question is whether it's worth exploiting. And what's worth exploiting about a single dad with a small apartment and a mountain of student loans? Vivian was quiet for a moment. Then, Emma. The word hit like a punch to the chest. He wouldn't, Logan said, but even as he spoke, he knew it was naive. Of course Morrison would. Men like him didn't recognize lines, only obstacles. He would threaten to. Make noise about your fitness as a parent, your work hours, your inability to provide proper supervision. It wouldn't hold up in court. You're an exemplary father, but the threat alone might be enough to make you reconsider. Vivian leaned forward. That's why I asked you to come here tonight. That's why I needed to see you. Because I refused to let him use your daughter as a weapon against you. What are you planning? I'm planning to fight, not just for myself, but for everyone Morrison is trying to destroy on his way to the top. Vivian's jaw tightened. But I need to know something first. I need to know if what happened between us this weekend, if it means what I think it means. Logan's heart rate accelerated. What do you think it means? I think it means I knocked on your door because some part of me recognized that you were safe, that you were different, that in a world full of people who wanted things from me, you were the one person who only wanted me to be okay. Vivian's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I think it means I fell asleep on your couch listening to the rain and felt more peaceful than I have in years. I think it means I woke up this morning and my first thought was of you, and my second thought was of Emma, and my third thought was terror because I don't know how to want things for myself anymore. The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. I don't know what this is, Vivian continued. I don't know if it's real or if I'm just clinging to kindness because I've been starving for it. I don't know if I'm capable of the kind of relationship you deserve, the kind that requires vulnerability and trust, and showing up day after day. I've never done that. I've never let anyone close enough to hurt me. A bitter laugh. Look how well that worked out. Vivian, let me finish, please. She took a breath. What I know is that you matter to me, in a way I didn't expect and don't entirely understand. And I know that I want to protect you, both of you, from the consequences of my chaos, but I don't know how to do that without... She trailed off, unable to finish. Without what? Without losing myself in you. Her eyes glistened in the low light. Without becoming someone who needs you so much that I forget who I am without you. I've seen that happen. I've watched strong women dissolve into their relationships, lose their edges, become shadows of themselves. I can't do that. I won't. I would never ask you to. You wouldn't have to ask. That's the danger. Vivian looked at him with something like desperation. You're good, Logan. You're genuinely good. And good is addictive for someone who's spent her whole life surrounded by people who only pretended. Logan leaned forward, closing some of the distance between them. Can I tell you what I know? She nodded, barely breathing. I know that 48 hours ago, I thought I understood my life. Work, Emma, survival, repeat. That was it. That was all there was going to be forever, until I died or retired or both. He held her gaze. Then you knocked on my door, and something I thought was dead woke up, something I'd buried when Rebecca left, something that whispers about possibility and hope and a future that's different from the present. Logan, I know this is complicated. I know you're my boss, or were my boss, or might be again. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is a terrible idea. I know I have a daughter to protect and a career to salvage, and absolutely no business falling for someone who lives in a different universe. He reached across the table and took her hand. It was trembling. But I also know that you showed up at my door and I let you in, and something happened. Something real. And I'm not willing to pretend it didn't. Vivian stared at their joined hands, her fingers curled around his, tentative but unmistakable. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to find out what this is. Carefully, slowly, without pressure or expectations. I'm saying that whatever happens with Morrison, whatever happens with the board, Whatever happens with your career or mine, I want to face it knowing that I was honest about how I feel. And how do you feel? Logan looked at her, this brilliant, terrifying, broken, beautiful woman who had somehow stumbled into his ordinary life and set it on fire. Like I've been holding my breath for 3 years, he said, and you're the first full breath I've taken since. The moment stretched between them, charged with everything said and everything left unspoken. Vivian's lips parted slightly. Her eyes searched his face, looking for deception and finding none. And then she leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, a question more than a statement. Logan's free hand came up to cup her face, and the question became an answer, and the answer became something deeper, something that rewrote the rules of both their worlds. When they finally broke apart, Vivian's cheeks were flushed and her careful composure had dissolved entirely. "That was probably a mistake," she whispered. "Probably," Logan agreed. "We should be careful." "Definitely. There's so much at stake." "I know." She looked at him, and for the first time since he'd known her, Vivian Cross smiled without any armor at all. "I don't care," she said. A small voice interrupted from the window seat. "Daddy, are you kissing the marshmallow lady?" They sprang apart, caught. Emma was sitting up, rubbing her eyes, looking at them with the expression of a child who has discovered something both scandalous and delightful. Logan started. "It's okay," Emma said matter-of-factly. "I think she's nice, and you haven't kissed anyone in forever. Maya's mom says that's unhealthy." "Maya's mom says a lot of things," Logan muttered. Vivian was trying desperately not to laugh. "Emma, can you keep a secret?" "I'm very good at secrets. I never told anyone about Daddy's hidden chocolate stash, even though I've known about it for months." Logan choked. "You knew about that?" "It's behind the cereal boxes. You're not very creative." Emma turned back to Vivian, suddenly serious. "But if it's a secret about kissing my dad, I'll keep it. I just want to know one thing first." "What's that?" Vivian asked. "Are you going to be around? Like, for real? Because Daddy gets sad sometimes even though he pretends he doesn't, and I think having someone to kiss might help with that, but only if you're going to stay, because if you leave like my mom did, it'll make everything worse, and I don't want things to be worse." The question hit Vivian like a physical blow. Logan saw her face shift through a dozen emotions: surprise, guilt, tenderness, fear, before settling into something resolute. "I don't know exactly what's going to happen," Vivian said carefully, kneeling down to Emma's level. "Grown-up things are complicated, and there are a lot of problems we're still figuring out. But I can tell you this. I will never leave without saying goodbye. I will never make promises I can't keep, and I will never, ever lie to you. Is that enough for now?" Emma studied her for a long moment, her brown eyes ancient with the wisdom of children who've learned too young that adults don't always keep their word. "That's enough," she decided. "But you should know that if you hurt my daddy, I'll put frogs in your car. Maya and I have a whole plan." "Duly noted," Vivian said solemnly. "I'm terrified of frogs." "Good." Emma nodded with satisfaction. "Now, can we have more hot chocolate?" The whipped cream melted while you were kissing. The rest of the evening passed in a warm blur. They ordered more hot chocolate, more pastries, and watched the night deepen beyond the cafe windows. Emma drew pictures on napkins while Logan and Vivian talked. About nothing, about everything, about the small things that build intimacy between strangers becoming something more. Logan learned that Vivian had a secret passion for terrible horror movies, that she'd wanted to be a marine biologist as a child, but her family had deemed it unsuitable, that she still had the first dollar she'd ever earned, from a lemonade stand at age 7, framed in her office where no one could see it. Vivian learned that Logan played guitar, badly, and only when Emma wasn't home to complain, that he'd met Rebecca in a library during a thunderstorm and had thought it was fate, that he still had trouble sleeping on the left side of the bed because that had been her side, even though it had been 3 years. They were building something, word by word, secret by secret, a foundation that might hold or might crumble, but was worth the risk of construction. At 9:30, Emma fell asleep again, this time in Logan's lap. He carried her out to the car, Vivian walking beside them, their shoulders occasionally brushing in the cool night air. "I should go home," Vivian said as Logan buckled Emma into her car seat. "I have calls to make. allies to contact. Morrison isn't going to stop just because I found something worth fighting for. Will you be okay? She turned to face him, streetlight catching the planes of her face. I don't know, but I know I'll be better than I was 3 days ago. And I know I'll keep being better as long as this, she gestured between them, is real. It's real, Logan said. Vivian stepped closer. Then I'll be okay. She kissed him again, briefer this time, but no less meaningful. I'll call you tomorrow. We need to talk strategy. Morrison's not the only one who knows how to play corporate chess. She walked away, her heels clicking on the pavement, disappearing into the darkness with the confidence of a woman who had remembered how to fight. Logan watched until she was gone. Then he got in the car, looked at his sleeping daughter in the rearview mirror, and drove home feeling lighter than he had in years. The lightness lasted until Tuesday morning. Logan woke to his phone buzzing with an urgency that immediately set his nerves on edge. 3 missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize, 2 voicemails, a text from Melissa that just said, "Oh my God, check the news." He checked the news. The headline hit like a sledgehammer. Cross Financial CEO implicated in misconduct scandal. Board demands resignation. The article was worse. Anonymous sources had leaked a story that painted Vivian as an unstable, vindictive leader who had allegedly harassed subordinates and engaged in inappropriate relationships with employees. The language was careful, lots of allegedly and sources say, but the implication was clear. Morrison had moved faster than expected. Logan's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number he recognized. "Tell me you've seen it," Vivian said without preamble. "I've seen it. It's all lies, every word. Morrison must have planted it last night. He has contacts at half the papers in the city." Her voice was tightly controlled, but Logan could hear the edges fraying. "They're calling an emergency board meeting this afternoon. They want my resignation by end of business today." "What are you going to do?" "Fight." "But Logan," she hesitated. "One of the anonymous sources claims to be an employee I had an inappropriate relationship with. They haven't named names yet, but if they dig, if they find out about this weekend, we haven't done anything wrong. It doesn't matter what we've done. It matters what they can make people believe." Vivian's breath came harsh through the phone. "I'm so sorry. I've dragged you into this. You and Emma, you were supposed to be safe, and I've painted a target on your back." "You didn't paint anything. Morrison did, and we're going to make him regret it." A pause. "We?" "I told you. Whatever happens, we face it together. That wasn't just pillow talk, Vivian. I meant it." Silence on the line, then softly, "I don't deserve you." "Yes, you do. You deserve someone who chooses you when it's hard, not just when it's easy. Now tell me what you need." What she needed was time. Time to contact her lawyers, to rally her allies on the board, to prepare a counteroffensive. Time that Morrison was actively trying to deny her. Logan went to work anyway. Not because he thought he could do anything useful, but because staying home would look like guilt. He sat at his desk, fielded curious looks from coworkers, and waited for the axe to fall. It fell at 11:30. "Hayes!" His supervisor's voice was cold. "HR, now!" The walk to human resources felt like a march to execution. Every step echoed in the sudden silence of the floor. Every eye followed him with the avid curiosity of spectators at a disaster. The HR director was waiting with 2 security guards. "Mr. Hayes, we've received some concerning information about your relationship with Ms. Cross. Given the current situation, we're going to need you to surrender your badge and company laptop. You're being placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation." Logan kept his face neutral. "On what grounds?" "The nature of your relationship with the CEO is being reviewed for potential conflicts of interest and violations of company policy." "There is no relationship to review. Ms. Cross and I have had exactly one personal interaction, when she happened to be in my neighborhood and stopped by to discuss a work matter." The lie tasted bitter, but it wasn't entirely false. They had discussed work, eventually. "That's not the information we've received," the HR director said. "Regardless, until the investigation is complete, you're not to enter company premises or contact any employees." "What about my projects? My files? I have active work that—" Your assignments will be reassigned. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. 10 minutes later, Logan was standing on the sidewalk outside Cross Financial with a cardboard box of desk photos and personal items. His badge was gone. His access was revoked. 3 years of work, of climbing, of surviving, erased in a single morning. He called Vivian. Voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. He was about to call a third time when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ms. Cross is currently in an emergency board meeting. She asked me to tell you that she's fighting for both of you. Stay strong. J. Probably Janet, Vivian's assistant, the same woman who'd transferred his call yesterday. Logan got in his car and drove to Emma's school. He sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, trying to process what had happened, trying to figure out what came next. The world had tilted on its axis, and he was still trying to find his footing. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Mr. Hayes, my name is Deborah Chen. I'm a reporter with the Tribune. I'm working on a story about Vivian Cross and her alleged misconduct. I understand you may have information relevant to... Logan hung up. 3 more reporters called in the next hour. He stopped answering. At 3:15, he picked up Emma from school, plastering a smile on his face that felt like a mask. She chattered about her day, oblivious to the chaos swirling around her father, and Logan was grateful for her innocence. Grateful that at least one person in his life still saw him as just daddy, not as a pawn in someone else's game. They went home. Logan made dinner. Emma did homework. The normalcy was almost painful in its contrast to the day's events. At 7 o'clock, someone knocked on the door. Logan's heart leaped. Vivian? But when he looked through the peephole, he saw a man in a suit he didn't recognize. Mr. Hayes, I'm Thomas Warren, attorney at law. I represent the board of directors of Cross Financial. May I come in? Every instinct screamed no, but refusing would look like he had something to hide. Emma, can you go play in your room for a bit? Daddy has to talk to a boring grown-up. Okay. She gathered her coloring books and disappeared down the hall. Logan opened the door but didn't invite the lawyer inside. What do you want? Warren smiled the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. The board would like to offer you an opportunity, Mr. Hayes. A very generous opportunity. I'm listening. We understand you've been placed on administrative leave. That's unfortunate. You have an excellent record, and we'd hate to see your career derailed by misunderstandings. Warren produced a document from his briefcase. This is a formal offer of reinstatement, along with a promotion to Senior Director of Financial Analysis. Significant salary increase. Stock options. The works. Logan's stomach churned. And what would I have to do for this generosity? Simply confirm the information we've already received about your relationship with Miss Cross. Sign a statement attesting to her inappropriate behavior. Testify, if necessary, at the board hearing tomorrow. In other words, lie. Warren's smile didn't waver. In other words, tell the truth as the board understands it. The board's understanding is fiction. The board's understanding is about to become official record, with or without your cooperation. Warren leaned closer. Think carefully, Mr. Hayes. You're a single father with a young daughter. No job, no severance, no references if you're terminated for cause. How long do you think you can survive without income? A month? 2? What happens to Emma when you can't make rent? The threat was delivered with perfect politeness, and it landed exactly where Warren intended. Logan thought about his bank account, about the bills piling up, about Emma's school fees and medical insurance and the 1,000 small expenses that kept life moving. He thought about what it would mean to start over, to rebuild from nothing, to try to find work with Cross Financial as his most recent employer and a misconduct investigation in his file. He thought about Vivian, about the way she'd looked at Emma, about the kiss in the cafe, about the first full breath in 3 years. No, he said. Warren's smile finally cracked. Excuse me? I said no. I won't sign your statement. I won't testify against someone who doesn't deserve it. And I won't sell my integrity for a promotion, no matter how generous. You're making a serious mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Warren's face hardened into something ugly. Very well, but understand this, Mr. Hayes. The board gets what the board wants. If you won't help us willingly, we'll find other ways. Your background, your fitness as a parent, that woman you had over the night of Miss Cross's engagement party. Logan's blood ran cold. How do you know about that? We know everything, Mr. Hayes, and we'll use everything. Warren tucked the document back into his briefcase. Last chance. Sign the statement, secure your future, or watch everything you love burn. The words hung in the air like poison. Then Emma's voice came from the hallway. Daddy, is everything okay? Warren's eyes flicked to the little girl standing in the doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Everything's fine, sweetheart, Logan said, his voice steady despite the rage building in his chest. Mr. Warren was just leaving. Warren looked at Emma, really looked at her, and something calculated entered his expression. Such a lovely child. It would be a shame if... Get out. Logan's voice was quiet, but the threat beneath it was unmistakable. Get out of my home. And if you ever come near my daughter again, I will destroy you. I don't care what it costs me. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Warren straightened his tie, adjusted his cufflinks, and stepped back. You have until noon tomorrow to change your mind. After that, the board proceeds with or without you. He left without another word. Logan closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it as his knees threatened to give out. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding. Every protective instinct he possessed was screaming. Daddy? Emma was still standing there, watching him with worried eyes. Who was that man? Why did he make you angry? Logan forced himself to breathe, to calm down, to be the father his daughter needed. He was just someone from work, sweetheart. We had a disagreement. But it's going to be okay. Are you sure? He wasn't sure of anything, but he knelt down, pulled her into his arms, and held her tight. I'm sure, he lied. Now, how about we call it an early night? I'll read you an extra story. 2 extra stories? Deal. As he tucked Emma into bed, as he read about brave knights and clever princesses and dragons who turned out to be misunderstood, Logan's mind was racing. He needed to talk to Vivian, needed to warn her about what was coming, needed to figure out how to protect his daughter from a board of directors that had just made clear they would stop at nothing. His phone buzzed at 9:30. Vivian's number. The board meeting went badly, she said without preamble. Her voice was hoarse, exhausted. They're calling for a formal vote of no confidence tomorrow at 2 o'clock. If it passes, I'm out. Vivian, something happened. A lawyer came to my apartment tonight. He threatened Emma. Silence. Then, cold as ice. What did he say? Logan told her everything, the offer, the threats, the way Warren had looked at his daughter like she was a piece in a game. I'm going to destroy them. Vivian's voice was shaking with fury. I'm going to burn Morrison and Warren and everyone else to the ground. We need to be smart about this. Rushing and angry is exactly what they want. Then help me be smart. Come to my penthouse tonight. I have information, recordings, documents, things Morrison doesn't know I have. Together, we can build a case. Together, we can fight back. Logan looked at Emma's closed bedroom door, at the small apartment that had been his sanctuary, his safe harbor, his entire world. I can't leave Emma alone. Not after tonight. Bring her. I have a guest room. She can sleep while we work. A pause. Logan, I need you. Not just for the fight. I need you because when I'm with you, I remember who I am, who I want to be. And right now, that's the only thing keeping me from falling apart. He should have said no, should have protected his daughter, protected himself, stayed safe in his small life with its small problems. But Vivian was drowning, and he couldn't watch her go under. Give me 20 minutes, he said. Vivian's penthouse was exactly what Logan had expected, and nothing like it at the same time. The building itself was a tower of glass and steel in the wealthiest part of the city, guarded by doormen and security systems and all the trappings of extreme wealth. But inside, the space felt almost empty. Beautiful furniture arranged with precision but no warmth. Art on the walls that probably cost more than Logan's yearly salary, but no photographs, no memories, no signs of the person who lived there. Emma, drowsy and confused about the late-night adventure, was tucked into a guest bed that was bigger than Logan's entire bedroom. She fell asleep within minutes, clutching her rabbit, oblivious to the world burning around her. Vivian led Logan to her home office, where documents covered every surface and multiple laptops displayed spreadsheets and emails and things that looked like security footage. "I've been gathering evidence for months," she said. "Not against the board specifically. I just knew that trust was a liability in my position. I recorded calls, saved emails, documented everything." She pulled up a video file. "This is Morrison 6 months ago bribing a city councilman to approve zoning for a project that benefited his personal investments. This, another file, is Warren, the lawyer who threatened your daughter, advising a client to commit securities fraud." Logan stared at the screen. "This is incredible. Why haven't you used it?" "Because I was waiting for the right moment, waiting until I had enough to bring them all down at once." Vivian's expression was grim. "They accelerated the timeline. I'm not ready, but I have to try." They worked through the night, organizing evidence, building a presentation, crafting a counter-narrative. Logan's financial analysis skills proved invaluable. He could see patterns Vivian had missed, connections between seemingly unrelated transactions, a web of corruption that extended far beyond Morrison himself. By 4 a.m, they had something. Not a guaranteed victory, but a fighting chance. Vivian leaned back in her chair, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. "Do you know what I regret most?" "What?" "That I didn't find you sooner. That I spent years surrounded by people like Morrison and Warren, people who saw me as a means to an end, when someone like you was there all along." She turned to face him. "Someone good. Someone real." "I was invisible," Logan said. "That's how I survived. Keep your head down, do your work, don't attract attention." "You attracted my attention. That day in the boardroom when you told me the truth about Meridian, I saw you, really saw you, and I've been watching ever since." "Watching?" "Your work, your dedication, the way you never took credit for things you should have, the way you helped other people succeed even when it meant staying in the shadows yourself." Vivian's hand found his. "I told myself I was just keeping an eye on a talented employee, but I think, on some level, I was always looking for an excuse to know you better. You could have just said hi in the elevator." She laughed, the sound exhausted but genuine. "Vivian Cross doesn't say hi. Vivian Cross intimidates, commands, keeps everyone at arm's length because that's the only way to survive." The laugh faded, until she finds herself standing in the rain at midnight, knocking on a stranger's door because she has nowhere else to go. Logan squeezed her hand. "You're not alone anymore." "I know." She leaned toward him, and her forehead came to rest against his. "That's the terrifying part." They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing the same air, sharing the same space. Then Vivian pulled back. "The board meeting is in 10 hours. We should try to sleep." "You take the bed. I'll stay with Emma." "Logan, we need you sharp. You're the one who has to face them. I'm just backup." She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Then she stood, kissed him gently, and walked toward her bedroom. At the door, she paused. "Logan?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." She disappeared before he could respond. Logan found his way to the guest room, settling into a chair beside Emma's bed. His daughter slept peacefully, unaware of the battles being fought around her, trusting completely that her father would keep her safe. He watched her breathe. He thought about Warren's threat. He thought about the vote happening in 10 hours, about Vivian's evidence, about the fragile hope they'd built together. And somewhere in the exhaustion and the fear and the impossible choices, Logan made a decision. Tomorrow, he was going to fight. Not just for Vivian, not just for himself, but for Emma, for the future, for the possibility that good people could win, even when the odds were stacked against them. It was the most terrifying decision of his life. He made it anyway. Morning came too soon, slicing through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Vivian's penthouse like a blade. Logan woke with a stiff neck and a racing heart, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings before the weight of the day crashed back over him. The chair he'd slept in was expensive, probably designer, but it hadn't been designed for a 6-foot man trying to catch 4 hours of rest before the most important day of his life. Emma was still asleep, her small form barely visible beneath the mountain of pillows and blankets on the guest bed. In sleep, she looked exactly like what she was, a 6-year-old who believed in marshmallows and magic and the fundamental goodness of the world. Logan watched her for a long moment, letting the sight of her steady him. Today, he would fight. For her. For all of them. He found Vivian in the kitchen, already dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his car. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her makeup flawless, her posture rigid with the kind of control that came from years of walking into rooms full of people who wanted to destroy her. She looked like a warrior preparing for battle. "Coffee's ready," she said without turning around. "And there's breakfast for Emma when she wakes up. I had my assistant arrange for a nanny service to stay with her during the meeting. They're vetted, background checked, the whole thing." "Thank you." Logan poured himself a cup of coffee, watching her reflection in the window. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified." The word came out flat, factual. But terror is just adrenaline without direction. I've been terrified before. I'll survive it again. That's not an answer. Vivian finally turned to face him. In the morning light, he could see the shadows beneath her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands that she was trying to hide. The armor was good, but it wasn't perfect. "I'm feeling like everything I've built is about to collapse," she said quietly. "Like I've spent 15 years climbing a mountain, and now I'm standing at the edge of a cliff, and someone is about to push me off." She set down her coffee cup with a precise click. "But I'm also feeling something I haven't felt in a long time." "What's that?" "Hope." Her eyes met his. "Because I'm not standing at that cliff alone. Because there's someone beside me who chose to be there. And that changes everything." Logan crossed the kitchen and took her hands in his. They were cold, trembling slightly despite her controlled expression. "We're going to get through this," he said. "Whatever happens today, we face it together. That's not just words, Vivian. That's a promise." "You can't promise that. You don't know what's going to happen." "I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to stand beside you. I'm going to tell the truth. And I'm not going to let Morrison win just because he's willing to fight dirtier than we are." Logan squeezed her hands. "Sometimes the good guys actually win. Maybe today is one of those times." Something flickered in Vivian's eyes. Vulnerability, gratitude, something deeper that neither of them was ready to name. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. "You keep saying that, and I keep telling you you're wrong." He lifted her hands to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. "Now, let's go save your company." The board meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock in the main conference room on the 47th floor of Cross Financial Tower. By the time Logan and Vivian arrived at 1:30, the building was already buzzing with tension. Employees whispered in hallways. Security guards stood at attention. The air itself seemed charged with the electricity of impending confrontation. Logan had left Emma with the nanny at Vivian's penthouse, explaining that Daddy had an important meeting and would be back soon. She'd accepted this with the easy trust of childhood, more interested in the massive television and the promise of cartoons than in the adult dramas swirling around her. Now, standing in the elevator as it climbed toward the executive floors, Logan felt the weight of what they were about to do pressing down on him. He was a junior analyst, former junior analyst technically, about to walk into a room full of the most powerful people in the company and accuse them of corruption. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. "Ready?" Vivian asked. "No," Logan admitted, "but let's do it anyway." The conference room was a cathedral of corporate power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. A massive mahogany table dominated the space, surrounded by leather chairs that probably cost more than Logan's monthly rent. At the head of the table sat Harold Morrison, his silver hair impeccable, his smile predatory. 12 board members occupied the remaining seats. Some Logan recognized from company photos. Others were strangers. All of them watched as Vivian Cross walked into the room with Logan Hayes at her side. Morrison's smile widened. "Vivian, how good of you to join us. And you've brought your friend. How touching." "Mr. Hayes is here as a witness," Vivian said, her voice cold and steady. "Since the board has seen fit to make allegations about my conduct, I thought it appropriate to have someone present who can speak to the truth." "The truth." Morrison leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "By all means, let's discuss the truth." The truth is that you've been conducting an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. The truth is that you've shown poor judgment in your personal life that raises questions about your professional capabilities. The truth is that this board has lost confidence in your leadership. The truth, Vivian countered, is that you've been waiting for an excuse to remove me for 3 years. The truth is that my engagement falling apart gave you the opening you needed. And the truth is that you've manufactured evidence and threatened witnesses to build a case that has no basis in reality. Murmurs rippled around the table. Morrison's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. Serious accusations, Vivian. I hope you have evidence to support them. I do. Vivian pulled a tablet from her briefcase and connected it to the room's display system. Over the past 18 months, I've documented numerous instances of misconduct by members of this board: bribery, securities fraud, insider trading, misuse of company funds. The evidence is comprehensive, verified, and damning. She tapped the screen, and documents began appearing on the wall display. Emails, financial records, video footage, a cascade of corruption that made several board members visibly pale. This is outrageous, Morrison sputtered. You can't possibly what? Protect myself? Prepare for the day when my enemies would try to destroy me? Vivian's voice was ice. You taught me that, Harold. You taught me that trust is weakness and preparation is everything. I learned the lesson well. Logan watched the board members' faces as the evidence mounted. Some looked shocked. Others looked guilty. A few, Karen Whitfield among them, looked almost relieved, as if they'd been waiting for someone to finally expose what they'd known but hadn't dared to challenge. This is clearly fabricated, Morrison said, but his voice had lost its confidence. A desperate attempt to deflect from your own misconduct. Is it? Vivian turned to Logan. Mr. Hayes, would you please tell the board about your interaction with Thomas Warren last night? Logan stepped forward, his heart pounding but his voice steady. Last night, Mr. Warren came to my home and attempted to coerce me into signing a false statement about Ms. Cross. When I refused, he threatened my 6-year-old daughter. Gasps around the table. Morrison's face went rigid. He told me the board would use everything to get what it wanted, Logan continued. He implied that my fitness as a parent would be questioned, that my daughter would be used as leverage. I recorded the entire conversation. He pulled out his phone and played the recording. Warren's voice filled the room, smooth and threatening, spelling out exactly what the board was willing to do to destroy anyone who stood in their way. When it ended, the silence was deafening. Karen Whitfield spoke first. Harold, did you authorize this? Of course not. Warren was acting on his own initiative. Clearly he— Don't! Whitfield's voice was sharp. Don't insult our intelligence. We've all seen how you operate. We've all looked the other way because it was easier than fighting you. But this? She gestured at the display, still showing the mountain of evidence Vivian had compiled. This is beyond the pale. Karen, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. For the first time in years, I'm being reasonable. Whitfield turned to face the other board members. I move that we table the vote of no confidence against Miss Cross and instead open an investigation into the conduct of Harold Morrison and any board members implicated in the evidence we've just seen. Seconded, said another board member, David Chen, head of the audit committee. This is a coup, Morrison snarled. You can't just— We can! Whitfield stood, and something in her posture had changed. She was no longer a subordinate bowing to Morrison's authority. She was a woman who had found her spine. The bylaws are clear. A majority vote can suspend any member pending investigation. I think we have enough here to warrant that suspension. All in favor? David Chen asked. 8 hands went up, then a 9th, then a 10th. Morrison stared around the table, watching his empire crumble. His face had gone from confident to desperate to something ugly and dangerous. You'll regret this, he said, his voice low and venomous. All of you. I built this company. I made you what you are, and I will burn it to the ground before I let you take it from me. That's enough. Vivian's voice cut through the room like a blade. Security, please escort Mr. Morrison from the building. His access is revoked effective immediately. 2 security guards who had been waiting outside entered the room. Morrison looked at them, looked at the board members who had just voted against him, looked at Vivian standing tall and unbroken despite everything he'd thrown at her. This isn't over, he said. Yes, Vivian replied. It is. They watched him go, flanked by security, his dignity stripped away with every step. The door closed behind him, and for a long moment, no one spoke. Then Karen Whitfield let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for years. Well, she said, that was overdue. The meeting continued for another 2 hours, but the tenor had completely changed. The board members who remained were a mix of relieved and shell-shocked, suddenly confronting the corruption they had enabled through silence and complicity. Vivian walked them through her evidence methodically, identifying which members were directly implicated and which had merely failed to act. By the end, 3 more board members had been suspended pending investigation. The vote of no confidence was officially tabled, and Vivian Cross was still CEO of Cross Financial, battered, exhausted, but standing. Logan watched her throughout, marveling at her transformation. The woman who had shown up at his door broken and desperate was gone, replaced by a leader who commanded the room with quiet authority. But every now and then her eyes would find his across the table, and he would see the vulnerability still there beneath the surface. She was still human, still afraid. Still the woman who had eaten scrambled eggs in his kitchen and taught Emma how to stack marshmallows. The duality of it, the warrior and the wounded soul, made him fall a little more in love with her with every passing minute. When the meeting finally ended, when the last board member had filed out, and the conference room was empty except for the 2 of them, Vivian collapsed into a chair. It's over, she said, her voice hollow. I can't believe it's actually over. You did it. Logan sat beside her, taking her hand. You took them all down. We did it. I couldn't have done this without you. She looked at him with eyes that were bright with unshed tears. When you played that recording, when you told them about Warren threatening Emma, I saw their faces change. They realized what they'd become part of, what Morrison had made them complicit in. Her voice broke slightly. You were the proof that there was something worth fighting for, someone worth protecting. You showed them what integrity looks like. I just told the truth. In a room full of people who had forgotten what truth meant, that was revolutionary. Vivian squeezed his hand. I know what you risked, your job, your security, your daughter's safety. You bet everything on me, on us, on something that might have failed. It didn't fail. It could have. She turned to face him fully. Why did you do it? Really? You barely know me. We've spent a total of maybe 20 hours together. Why would you risk everything for someone you just met? Logan considered the question carefully. It deserved a real answer, not platitudes or deflection. When Rebecca left, he said slowly, I stopped believing in things. In love, in loyalty, in the idea that people could be trusted with your heart. I built walls. I focused on Emma, on work, on survival. I told myself that was enough, that keeping my head down and getting through each day was the best I could hope for. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Then you knocked on my door, and something I thought was dead woke up. Not just attraction, though there's that too, but something bigger. A belief that maybe the world isn't as broken as I thought. That maybe there are still people worth trusting, worth fighting for, worth taking risks for. Vivian was watching him with an intensity that made his heart race. You asked me why I did it. I did it because you matter to me. In a way I can't fully explain and don't entirely understand. But it's real, Vivian. Whatever this is between us, it's real. And real things are worth protecting. The tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over. She didn't try to hide them this time. I'm terrified, she whispered. I've never let anyone this close, never let anyone see me the way you've seen me, and part of me is screaming that I'm making a mistake, that I'm going to get hurt, that I should run before it's too late. What does the other part of you say? She let out a shaky laugh. The other part of me says that running is what I've always done, and it's never made me happy. The other part of me says that maybe, just maybe, this is what I've been looking for my whole life without knowing it. And which part are you going to listen to? Vivian looked at him for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and kissed him, soft and slow, with all the vulnerability she'd been trying to hide. This part, she said against his lips. I'm listening to this part. They left the building together, walking through the lobby that had been Vivian's kingdom for nearly a decade. Employees stared, whispered, wondered what had happened in the boardroom and what it meant for their futures. But Vivian didn't explain, didn't owe them explanations. She just walked, her hand in Logan's, toward whatever came next. The penthouse was quiet when they returned. The nanny reported that Emma had been an angel, eating her lunch, watching cartoons, and talking extensively about the importance of tiny marshmallows in hot chocolate. "She's quite passionate about that topic," the nanny said with a bemused smile. "She gets it from her father," Logan said. "He's very particular about marshmallows." Vivian laughed, a real laugh, the kind that came from somewhere deep and genuine, and the sound of it made Logan's heart swell. They found Emma in the living room, drawing pictures with expensive crayons on what was probably very expensive paper. She looked up when they entered, her face breaking into a smile. "Daddy! Vivian, you're back!" She scrambled up and ran to them, hugging Logan's legs and then, after a moment's hesitation, reaching for Vivian too. "Did you win your important meeting?" Logan and Vivian exchanged glances. "Yeah, sweetheart," Logan said. "We won." "Good." Emma nodded with satisfaction. "Winning is important, but do you know what's more important?" "What?" "Hot chocolate with marshmallows. The nanny said she couldn't find any, and I've been waiting forever." Vivian knelt down to Emma's level. "You know what? I think you're absolutely right. Hot chocolate is more important, and I happen to know a cafe that has the best marshmallows in the city." "The Rusty Anchor?" Emma's eyes went wide. "Can we go? Please?" "We can go." "Yes!" Emma pumped her fist in the air. "This is the best day ever." Watching his daughter celebrate with such uncomplicated joy, watching Vivian smile at her with genuine affection, Logan felt something settle in his chest. Something that had been restless and searching for years finally finding a place to land. This. This was what he'd been missing. This was what he'd been afraid to hope for. Family. They went to the Rusty Anchor. They ordered hot chocolate with substantial whipped cream. Emma regaled them with stories about her day with the nanny, about the cartoons she'd watched, about the elaborate backstory she'd invented for Vivian's houseplants. "The fern is named Gerald," she explained seriously. "He's a spy. He's been gathering intelligence on the other plants for months." "What kind of intelligence?" Vivian asked, playing along. "Secret plant intelligence. Like who's been getting the most water and who's been hogging the sunlight. There's a whole conspiracy." "That sounds very serious." "It is. Gerald is in deep, but he's going to expose everything. He's just waiting for the right moment." Logan watched them together, his daughter and this woman who had crashed into their lives like a meteor, and marveled at how natural it felt. How right. The past 4 days had been chaos, broken engagements and midnight knocks and corporate warfare and threats against his child. But here, in this moment, surrounded by the smell of chocolate and the sound of Emma's laughter, all of that seemed far away. "Daddy," Emma tugged on his sleeve, "you're doing the soft look again." "What soft look?" "The one where you look at Vivian like she's made of marshmallows and you're really hungry." Logan choked on his hot chocolate. Vivian tried to hide her smile behind her mug. "I do not," he started. "You totally do. It's okay. I like her too." Emma patted his hand consolingly. "It's nice that you found someone. Maya's mom says you were probably going to die alone with a bunch of cats, but now maybe you won't." "Maya's mom needs to stop sharing her opinions with 6-year-olds. "That's what I said. But she said 6-year-olds are very perceptive and deserve to know things." Vivian finally lost her battle with composure and burst out laughing. The sound filled the small cafe, warm and bright and completely unguarded. Other patrons looked over, drawn by the unexpected joy, and saw nothing but a small family sharing hot chocolate on a Tuesday afternoon. They didn't know what it had cost to get here. They didn't know about the battles fought and the prices paid and the choices made. They just saw happiness. And maybe that was enough. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. The investigation into Morrison and his allies moved forward rapidly. 3 board members resigned in disgrace. Thomas Warren was disbarred and facing criminal charges for witness intimidation. The financial press had a field day with the story, turning Vivian into either a hero or a villain depending on the publication. Through it all, Logan stayed by her side. Not as an employee, His position at Cross Financial had been officially terminated during the chaos, and neither he nor Vivian thought it appropriate for him to return. But as something else, something they were still figuring out how to name. He spent his days sending out resumes, networking, exploring options. The severance package Vivian had ensured he received was generous enough to give him breathing room, time to find the right opportunity rather than grabbing at any port in a storm. But the nights belonged to them. They fell into a rhythm without planning it. Dinner together when Vivian's schedule allowed. Evenings at Logan's apartment or her penthouse, talking, laughing, learning each other's stories. Emma became a fixture at Vivian's place on weekends, building elaborate blanket forts and watching movies and teaching Vivian the critical art of marshmallow architecture. It wasn't a fairy tale. Vivian still worked 80-hour weeks. Logan still struggled with the uncertainty of unemployment. They argued sometimes about logistics, about priorities, about the small frictions that emerge when two independent lives begin to merge. But they talked through it, every time. They refused to let problems fester or resentments build. They were both too scarred by past failures to make those mistakes again. "We're doing this differently," Vivian said one night, lying beside him in bed, moonlight streaming through the windows. "No games, no pretense, no saying what we think the other person wants to hear." "Radical honesty," Logan agreed. "It's terrifying. It's the only way I know how to do this without losing myself." She turned to face him. "I've been thinking about something." "What?" "The company. My role in it." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I've spent 15 years building Cross Financial. It's been my whole identity. But these past few weeks being with you and Emma, I've realized something." "What's that?" "I don't want that to be my whole identity anymore." Her voice was quiet but certain. "I don't want to be the woman who sacrificed everything for success. I want to be someone who succeeded and lived, who had a career and a family and a life outside of boardrooms and balance sheets." Logan propped himself up on one elbow, looking at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to delegate more, trust my team more, make space in my life for things that aren't work." Her eyes found his in the darkness. "Make space for you, for Emma, for whatever this becomes." Vivian Cross admitting she can't do everything herself. That's a first. She smiled, but it was tinged with something vulnerable. "I'm serious, Logan. I know my track record with relationships isn't great. I know I've always put my career first and let everything else suffer. But I don't want to do that anymore. I want to try something different. I want to try being happy." "I want that too. So we'll figure it out together. The logistics, the complications, the fact that I'm technically your former employer and we met under possibly the least appropriate circumstances imaginable. We'll figure it out." He leaned down and kissed her. Together. They lay in comfortable silence for a while, the city humming beyond the windows, the future stretching out before them, full of uncertainty and possibility. "I never thanked you properly," Vivian said suddenly. "For what?" "For opening your door, that night. You could have ignored the knock, could have told me to leave, could have called the police on the crazy woman showing up in the rain. But you let me in. You gave me a towel and dry clothes and hot chocolate with marshmallows." Her voice caught. "You saved me." "I didn't save you. I just gave you a place to fall apart. You saved yourself." "No." She was firm. "I couldn't have done any of this alone." The board meeting, standing up to Morrison, finding the courage to fight back. "I only had that strength because you were standing beside me. Because I knew I wasn't alone." Logan pulled her close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. "We saved each other," he said. "That night you didn't just knock on my door. You opened a whole new life. For both of us." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I love you." The words hung in the air, simple and profound and terrifying. "I know it's too soon," she continued quickly. "I know we've only known each other for a few weeks, and we should be careful and rational, and I love you too." Silence. "You do?" "I do." He pulled back to look at her, to make sure she could see the truth in his eyes. "I tried to talk myself out of it. Told myself it was too fast, too complicated, too risky. But every time I'm with you, every time I see you with Emma, every time you laugh or argue or show me another piece of who you really are, I fall a little more." Vivian's eyes were bright with tears again. But this time they were different. This time they were happy. "We're insane," she said. "Probably. This is going to be incredibly complicated." "Almost certainly. There are 1,000 reasons why this is a terrible idea. At least 1,000. She laughed, and the sound was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "I don't care," she said. "I don't care about any of it. I just want this. I want you. I want Emma and marshmallows and blanket forts and a life that's messy and complicated and real. Then that's what we'll build." They kissed again, and the kiss turned into something more, and the night turned into something they would both remember for the rest of their lives. Not because it was perfect. Nothing was perfect. But because it was real. Because they had chosen each other, scars and baggage and all. Because in a world full of people who played games and kept score and held back, they had decided to be different. They had decided to be brave. 3 months after the night Vivian knocked on Logan's door, things had changed in ways neither of them could have predicted. Logan had started his own financial consulting firm. It was small, just him and a laptop, and the expertise he'd developed over years of corporate work, but it was growing. Word had spread about the analyst who'd stood up to Cross Financial's board, who'd risked everything to expose corruption, and suddenly his reputation was an asset rather than a liability. Clients came to him specifically because they wanted someone with integrity, someone who would tell them the truth even when the truth was hard. It turned out there was a market for honesty. Who knew? Vivian, meanwhile, had made good on her promise to delegate more. She'd promoted several talented executives, restructured her leadership team, and reduced her average work week from 80 hours to a more manageable 55. It was still a lot, but it was progress. And for the first time in her career, she was leaving the office before dark more often than not. They had settled into a rhythm that worked for them. Logan's apartment had become their unofficial headquarters for family time, small, cozy, full of Emma's drawings and mismatched furniture and the comfortable chaos of real life. Vivian's penthouse was for the times when they needed space, quiet, a reminder that luxury was nice but wasn't everything. Emma had adapted to their new reality with the resilience of children everywhere. She had started referring to Vivian as "my Vivian" to her friends at school, explaining with great seriousness that some people had moms and some people had Vivians, and hers happened to have the best hot chocolate maker in the whole city. "I think that's a compliment," Vivian had said when Logan told her. "The highest one a 6-year-old can give." They hadn't talked about next steps, about where this was going, what they were building, whether there would be rings or vows or any of the traditional markers of commitment. It seemed premature. They had known each other for 3 months. They were still learning, still growing, still figuring out how to merge two very different lives. But sometimes, late at night, Logan would watch Vivian sleep and imagine a future, a house somewhere with a backyard for Emma to play in, maybe a dog, maybe more children. A life built together, day by day, choice by choice. He hadn't felt this hopeful since before Rebecca left. It was a Tuesday evening when everything shifted again. Logan was at his apartment, reviewing client files while Emma did homework at the kitchen table. It was ordinary, quiet, the kind of evening that felt unremarkable in the moment, but would be remembered later as the last breath before the storm. His phone buzzed, a text from Vivian. "Need to see you. Can you come to the penthouse tonight? Important." He texted back, "Everything okay?" Her response took longer than usual. "I don't know. Just come. Please." Logan's heart rate accelerated. Something in her tone, even through text, felt wrong. He called the neighbor who sometimes watched Emma in emergencies, explained that something had come up, and was out the door within 20 minutes. The elevator ride to Vivian's penthouse felt endless. 100 scenarios played through Logan's mind, each worse than the last. Had Morrison found a way to strike back? Had the board investigation uncovered something damaging to Vivian? Had she changed her mind about them? When the elevator doors opened, he found Vivian standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her back to him, her silhouette rigid against the city lights. "Vivian?" She didn't turn around immediately. When she spoke, her voice was strange, controlled, the way it had been in the boardroom when she was forcing herself to hold together by sheer force of will. "I got a call today, from my doctor." Logan's blood ran cold. "What kind of call?" "I've been tired lately, more than usual. I thought it was stress, the aftermath of everything with Morrison, adjusting to our new life. But my assistant convinced me to get checked out, just to be safe. Vivian finally turned to face him. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry, as if she'd already cried herself out and had nothing left. They found something in my blood work. They want to do more tests, but when she couldn't finish the sentence, Logan crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. She was shaking, he realized, trembling like she had the night she'd shown up at his door, when her whole world had collapsed around her. "What did they find?" he asked gently. "Abnormalities in my white blood cell count. They think—" Her voice broke. "They think it might be leukemia." The word hung in the air, ugly and terrifying. "Might be," Logan repeated. "That's not a diagnosis, that's a possibility. A possibility that would explain why I've been so exhausted, why I can't seem to recover from simple things anymore, why I've been losing weight even though I'm eating normally." Vivian pulled back to look at him, and the fear in her eyes was something he'd never seen before. Not even on the night of her broken engagement. "I might be sick, Logan, really sick, and I don't know how to—" "Hey!" He cupped her face in his hands. "We don't know anything yet. We don't know what the tests will show. We don't know if it's actually leukemia or something else entirely. What we know is that you're scared, and that's okay. But you're not alone. Whatever this is, we face it together. Remember? This is different." "How?" "Because if I'm sick, if I'm really sick, that changes everything. That changes what you signed up for. What Emma signed up for. I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking. I'm choosing." Logan's voice was firm. "I chose you the night you knocked on my door. I chose you when I refused to sign that statement. I chose you every day for the past 3 months. And I'm choosing you now, Vivian, not because you're healthy or successful or because things are easy, because you're you and you're mine." Vivian stared at him as if he'd said something incomprehensible. "You're insane," she whispered. "We've established that. I could be dying." "Then we'll face it, together. We'll get the best doctors, explore every treatment option, fight like hell. And if the worst happens—" His voice caught, but he forced himself to continue. "If the worst happens, I'll be there. Every step, every moment, until the end." "Why would you do that? Why would anyone do that?" "Because I love you." The words came easily now, a truth so fundamental it needed no explanation. And love doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't say, "I'll stay as long as things are good," or "I'll be here unless you get sick." Love says, "I'm here, period, no matter what." Vivian broke. The tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over, and she collapsed against him, sobbing with the raw, ugly desperation of someone who had never let herself be held like this before. Logan held her. He didn't try to fix it or make it better or offer false reassurances. He just held her, letting her fall apart, being the solid ground she could stand on when everything else was shifting sand. They stayed like that for a long time. Eventually, Vivian's sobs subsided. She pulled back, wiped her face, tried to reassemble her composure. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to—" "Don't apologize. Not for this. Not ever. I've never been good at being vulnerable, at letting people see me like this. I know, and I'm honored that you trust me enough to let me in." Logan brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Now, tell me about these tests. What's the timeline? What do we need to do?" They talked for hours. About the medical details, the possibilities, the practical arrangements that would need to be made. About telling Emma, or not telling Emma, depending on what the results showed. About work, about responsibilities, about how to face uncertainty without letting it consume them. Somewhere around midnight, exhausted and wrung out, they fell asleep on Vivian's couch, tangled together like 2 people who had learned that holding on was the only way to survive. And in the morning, when the sun came up and the city came back to life, they faced the new day together, because that's what they did now. Because whatever storms came, corporate battles or health scares, or the 1,000 unexpected challenges life threw at them, they faced them as a unit. Because they had found something worth fighting for. Because love, real love, wasn't about perfect circumstances or easy roads. It was about showing up, every day, no matter what. And that's exactly what Logan Hayes intended to do. The tests came back negative. 3 weeks of waiting, of sleepless nights, and forced smiles and pretending everything was fine for Emma's sake. And then the phone call that changed everything. Not leukemia, not cancer of any kind, just a severe vitamin deficiency combined with exhaustion, the cumulative toll of years of overwork finally demanding payment. When Vivian hung up the phone, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely set it down on the table. Logan was beside her instantly, reading the answer in her face before she could speak. "It's okay," she whispered. "It's going to be okay." They held each other in the middle of her living room, crying and laughing at the same time, overwhelmed by relief so intense it felt almost painful. The weight that had been pressing down on them for weeks lifted, and suddenly the future stretched out before them again. Uncertain, yes, but full of possibility rather than dread. "I thought I was going to lose you," Logan said into her hair. "I was trying so hard to be strong, but inside I was terrified." "I know." Vivian pulled back to look at him. "I saw it. Every time you thought I wasn't watching, I saw how scared you were. And you stayed anyway. You never wavered. I told you, together, no matter what." She kissed him then, soft and desperate and full of gratitude for second chances, for clean bills of health, for the simple, extraordinary gift of more time. That night they told Emma. Not about the health scare, she was too young for that kind of wait, but about the future. About how things were going to be different now, better, with more time for the three of them to be together. Emma listened with the solemn attention she gave to all important matters, her stuffed rabbit clutched in her lap. "So Vivian's not going to work so much anymore?" she asked. "That's right, sweetheart. I'm going to make more time for the things that really matter." "Like hot chocolate?" Vivian smiled. "Exactly like hot chocolate." "And blanket forts?" "Definitely blanket forts." Emma considered this for a moment, then nodded with satisfaction. "Good. Because I have a lot of ideas for forts that we haven't tried yet. I've been saving them." "I can't wait to see them," Vivian said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. The health scare had clarified something that had been building for months. Life was short, uncertain. There were no guarantees, no promises that tomorrow would come. And if that was true, if every moment was precious and finite, then what was the point of spending them on things that didn't matter? Vivian made changes. Real, concrete changes that shocked everyone who had known her before. She stepped back from day-to-day operations at Cross Financial, promoting Karen Whitfield to Chief Operating Officer and trusting her team to handle the decisions she had once insisted on making herself. She reduced her board commitments, her speaking engagements, her endless round of networking events and power dinners. And she started something new. The idea had been growing in her mind for months, ever since the night she'd knocked on Logan's door. A fund specifically designed to support women-led companies and entrepreneurs. A way to use her wealth and expertise to lift up others who were fighting the same battles she had fought. She called it the Midnight Fund, a private joke that only she and Logan understood. "Because that's when everything changed," she explained when he asked about the name. "Midnight. Your door. The knock that started everything." Logan watched her build this new venture with the same intensity she'd once given to Cross Financial, but with something different underneath. Joy, purpose, a sense that she was finally doing something that mattered to her, not just something that proved her worth to others. His own business was growing too. Word had continued to spread about the analyst who'd stood up to corruption, and clients were seeking him out specifically for his integrity and independence. He'd hired his first employee, a young woman fresh out of graduate school who reminded him of himself 10 years ago, hungry and ethical and determined to do things right. They were building something, he and Vivian. Separate careers, separate identities, but woven together in ways that made both of them stronger. She consulted on his financial analyses when he needed a second opinion. He helped her vet investment opportunities, bringing his technical skills to complement her strategic vision. And always, underneath everything else, there was Emma. She had become the center of their shared universe, the small sun around which everything else orbited. Weekend mornings were for pancakes and cartoons. Evenings were for homework and stories and the elaborate blanket fort constructions that had become Emma's signature art form. Vivian discovered talents she hadn't known she possessed. A gift for making up bedtime stories on the spot. A willingness to be silly, to play pretend, to enter the magical world of a child's imagination without reservation. She learned the names of all the teachers at Emma's school, the complex social dynamics of first-grade friendships, the critical importance of being the parent who showed up at school events. "I never had this," she told Logan one night after Emma had finally fallen asleep in her elaborate pillow fortress. "My parents were distant, formal. They loved me in their way, but it was always conditional, based on achievement, on being the daughter they wanted me to be. And now? Now I understand what I was missing." She looked at him with eyes that held no defenses. "I understand why you do everything you do for Emma, why you'd sacrifice anything, risk anything, to give her a good life. It's not just duty or obligation, it's love, the kind that doesn't ask for anything in return." "It changes you," Logan agreed, "having someone who depends on you completely, someone who trusts you without reservation. It makes you want to be better than you thought you could be." "I want to be that for her," Vivian said quietly. "I know I'm not her mother. I know I can never replace Rebecca, and I wouldn't try. But I want to be someone she can count on, someone who shows up, always, no matter what." Logan took her hand. "You already are." 6 months after the night of the midnight knock, they moved in together. It was Vivian's idea, though Logan had been thinking about it too. Her penthouse was too big, too cold, too full of the person she used to be. His apartment was too small for 3 people and a growing collection of blanket fort materials. They needed something in between, something that was theirs, together, from the beginning. They found a brownstone in a quiet neighborhood with good schools and a small backyard. It needed work. The previous owners had let things slide, but that was part of the appeal. They would fix it up together, make it their own. Emma picked out the color for her room, a shade of purple she called Grape Dream that was slightly too intense but perfect in her eyes. Vivian hired contractors for the structural work but insisted on painting the living room herself, ending up with more color on her clothes than on the walls. Logan built bookshelves, installed a swing set in the backyard, spent an entire weekend putting together a treehouse that Emma had drawn in elaborate detail and he had translated into reality as best he could. "It's crooked," Vivian observed, looking at the finished product. "It's character," Logan countered. "It's definitely going to fall down." "It's been standing for 3 hours. That's practically permanent." Emma loved it. The crookedness, the character, the fact that her father had built it with his own hands just for her. She spent hours up there, reading and dreaming and watching the neighborhood from her small wooden kingdom. They settled into a rhythm. Morning chaos of breakfast and school runs and work preparations, quiet days apart, pursuing their separate careers and purposes. Evenings together, the 3 of them, building the life they had chosen. It wasn't perfect. There were arguments about dishes and schedules and the right way to load a dishwasher. There were days when Vivian got pulled back into work and came home too late, too tired, too far away. There were moments when Logan's insecurities surfaced, when he wondered if he was enough for someone who had once lived in penthouses and moved in circles of power and wealth. But they talked, always. They had promised each other radical honesty, and they kept that promise even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. "I feel like I'm not contributing enough," Logan admitted one night after a particularly successful week for the Midnight Fun. "You're out there changing the world, and I'm just doing spreadsheets." "Your spreadsheets have helped a dozen small businesses avoid bankruptcy this year," Vivian countered. "You've saved jobs, livelihoods, families. That's not nothing, Logan. That's everything." "It doesn't feel like everything." "Then maybe you need to redefine everything." She moved closer to him on the couch. "I spent 15 years measuring my worth by the size of my bank account and the fear in my competitors' eyes. And you know what? It was empty. All of it. I had everything the world told me to want, and I was miserable. And now? Now I have you, and Emma, and this house that's slightly crooked but full of love, and I've never been happier." She took his face in her hands. "You are enough, Logan Hayes, more than enough. You're the best thing that ever knocked on my door, even if technically I was the one who knocked." He laughed despite himself. "That's not how the metaphor works. I'm a CEO. I make metaphors work however I want them to." Former CEO. Details. They were still laughing when Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Why are you being loud? Some of us are trying to sleep. Sorry, sweetheart, Logan said. We were just being silly. Grown-ups are weird. Emma shuffled over and climbed onto the couch between them. But I guess you're okay, for grown-ups. High praise, Vivian said solemnly. The highest. Emma yawned. Can we have pancakes tomorrow? The special ones with the chocolate chips? Absolutely. And can Vivian make them? No offense, Daddy, but yours are kind of lumpy. They're supposed to be lumpy. It's a family tradition. It's a family tragedy. Vivian burst out laughing again, and this time Emma joined in, and Logan found himself laughing too, surrounded by the two people who had become his entire world. This, he thought, this is what I almost missed. This is what I would have missed if I hadn't opened the door. Later, after Emma had been carried back to bed and the house had gone quiet, Logan stood at the window looking out at the backyard. The crooked treehouse was visible in the moonlight, a testament to imperfection and love. Vivian came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. What are you thinking about? She asked. The night you knocked. How different everything could have been if I'd pretended I wasn't home. But you didn't. No, I didn't. He turned to face her. I think some part of me knew. Even before I saw you through the peephole, some part of me knew that whoever was on the other side of that door was going to change everything. Fate? Maybe. Or maybe just the universe giving us one chance to choose differently, to be brave instead of safe. Vivian smiled, and in that smile he saw everything. The broken woman who had arrived in the rain, the warrior who had defeated her enemies, the lover who had chosen him against all odds, the mother figure who had embraced his daughter as her own. I'm glad we chose brave, she said. Me too. They stood there together, looking out at the life they had built, knowing that whatever came next, challenges, joys, ordinary days, and extraordinary ones, they would face it together. Because that was who they were now. Not a CEO and an analyst, not a single father and a corporate refugee. Just two people who had knocked on each other's doors and found something worth keeping. A year passed like water through open fingers, swift and precious, and impossible to hold. Logan marked the anniversary the way he marked all important things now. Quietly, with intention, surrounded by the people who mattered most. He woke before dawn on that Tuesday morning, slipped out of bed without disturbing Vivian, and made his way downstairs to the kitchen they had renovated together. The coffee maker hummed to life. Morning light crept through the windows, and Logan stood in the silence of his home, marveling at how completely his life had transformed. 1 year ago, he had been a single father surviving on autopilot, going through the motions of existence without really living. 1 year ago, he had opened his door to a broken stranger and watched everything change. Now, that stranger was upstairs in their bed. His daughter was sleeping down the hall in her grape dream purple room. His consulting business was thriving. His heart was full. He was making pancakes when Vivian appeared, still sleep-rumpled and beautiful, wearing one of his old t-shirts. You're up early, she said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Couldn't sleep. Too much thinking. About what? About a year ago. About the night everything started. Vivian rested her chin on his shoulder, watching him flip pancakes with practiced ease. The midnight knock. The midnight knock. He turned to face her, abandoning the stove for a moment. I've been thinking about asking you something. Something shifted in her expression, a flicker of hope, quickly suppressed, as if she was afraid to want too much. What kind of something? Logan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He had been carrying it for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment, the right words, the right way to ask the question that had been building in his chest since the first night she'd slept on his couch. He didn't kneel. That felt too formal, too staged for who they were. Instead, he simply opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring, elegant but not ostentatious, beautiful without being overwhelming. Move in with me already happened, he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. And I know we've talked about taking things slow, about not rushing into anything. But I've realized something, Vivian. Every day with you feels like a gift. And I don't want to spend another year waiting for the perfect moment when every moment with you is already perfect. Her eyes were glistening, her hands trembling as she pressed them to her mouth. I'm not asking because it's expected or because it's the next logical step, Logan continued. I'm asking because I can't imagine my life without you in it. I'm asking because Emma already calls you her Vivian and gets upset when you're not at breakfast. I'm asking because you've made me believe in things I thought were dead: love, partnership, the possibility of really being known by another person. Logan, I'm asking because I love you completely, without reservation, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that every single day. He held the ring between them, a small circle of promise. Vivian Cross, will you marry me? The silence stretched for one heartbeat. 2. Then Vivian was laughing and crying at the same time, throwing her arms around his neck, nearly knocking the ring out of his hand in her enthusiasm. Yes, she said against his ear. Yes, absolutely, yes. They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other in their kitchen while the pancakes slowly burned on the stove and the morning light grew brighter around them. I was going to ask you, Vivian admitted when they finally pulled apart. I had a whole plan. Dinner at the Rusty Anchor, where we had our first hot chocolate with Emma. I was going to give a speech about how you saved my life that night, about how I never knew what I was missing until I found you. You can still give the speech. It doesn't feel necessary now. She looked at the ring on her finger, turning her hand to catch the light. This feels like it was always supposed to happen, like everything. The broken engagement, the rain, the midnight knock, was leading here. Maybe it was. You believe in fate now? I believe in you. That's enough. They were interrupted by small footsteps on the stairs. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, her hair a wild tangle, her eyes immediately going to the smoking stove. Daddy, you're burning the pancakes again. Logan lunged for the stove, rescuing what he could while Emma climbed onto her usual chair at the kitchen table. She watched her father's efforts with the critical eye of a restaurant inspector, then turned her attention to Vivian, and stopped. Is that a ring? Emma's voice rose to a pitch that only dogs and small children could achieve. Is that a ring on your finger? Is that what I think it is? Vivian held out her hand. What do you think it is? I think it's an engagement ring. I think Daddy finally asked you. I've been waiting forever. Emma jumped off her chair and ran to them, inserting herself between the two adults with practiced ease. Maya said her mom said it would never happen because Daddy's too shy, but I told her Daddy's not shy. He's just careful, and I was right. You were right, Logan agreed, abandoning the ruined pancakes entirely. So you're going to get married? Like for real married? With a wedding and a dress and cake? All of that, Vivian confirmed. Can I be in the wedding? Can I wear a fancy dress? Can I throw flowers? You can do anything you want. Emma's face split into the widest grin Logan had ever seen. She hugged Vivian's waist fiercely, then Logan's legs, then both of them together in an awkward group embrace that somehow felt absolutely perfect. This is the best day ever, Emma declared. Even better than the day you brought tiny marshmallows for the first time. That's high praise, Vivian said, her voice thick with emotion. The highest. Emma pulled back, suddenly serious. But Vivian, I need to tell you something important. What's that, sweetheart? You're already family. The wedding is just to make it official. But in my heart, you've been family since the marshmallows. Vivian knelt down to Emma's level, her eyes bright with tears she didn't try to hide. That's the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me. I know. Emma nodded modestly. I'm very good with words. My teacher says so. They made new pancakes together, all three of them crowded around the stove, laughing at Logan's technique and Vivian's attempts to improve it, and Emma's running commentary on everything. The burned batch went in the trash. The second batch came out perfect. They ate at the kitchen table, talking about wedding plans and venues and whether or not to invite Maya's mom despite her pessimistic predictions. We have to invite her, Emma insisted, so she can see she was wrong. That's the best part of proving people wrong. That's a little petty, sweetheart. I learned it from Vivian. Logan choked on his coffee. Vivian had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I may have said something like that once, in a different context. You said it about the board members who tried to fire you. You said the best revenge is proving people wrong and then being too happy to care about revenge. That's actually pretty good advice. I know, I listened to everything. The wedding was 6 months later, in early autumn, under a sky so blue it looked painted. They held it outdoors, in the backyard of a country estate that one of Vivian's midnight fun companies owned. 50 guests, close friends, family members who had earned the title through love rather than blood, colleagues who had stood by them during the dark times. Emma was the flower girl, as promised. She wore a purple dress that matched her grape dream bedroom and threw petals with the enthusiasm of someone who had been practicing for months. Logan stood at the altar in a simple navy suit, watching Vivian walk toward him through the scattered flowers. She wore ivory, not white, a deliberate choice, she'd told him, because they weren't pretending to be something they weren't. They were two people with histories, with scars, with pasts that had shaped them into who they needed to be to find each other. She was radiant, not just beautiful, though she was that too. Radiant in a deeper sense, lit from within by a joy that had been hard-won and was therefore precious beyond measure. When she reached him, when she took his hands in hers, Logan felt the world narrow to just the two of them. The guests faded. The music faded. Everything faded except the woman standing before him, her eyes bright with unshed tears, her smile trembling with emotion. "I was broken when I found you," Vivian said, her vows simple and direct. "I had lost everything I thought mattered, and I didn't know who I was without it. You gave me a place to fall apart. You gave me grace when I needed it most. You showed me that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about letting someone help you put the pieces back together." She squeezed his hands. "I promise to be your partner in everything, to support your dreams and challenge your fears, to love Emma as my own, always and forever, to build a life with you that's messy and complicated and absolutely worth it, and to remember every single day that the best thing I ever did was knock on your door at midnight." Logan's throat was tight. He had written his vows on paper, but now the paper seemed inadequate. The words he'd prepared couldn't capture what he felt, so he spoke from the heart instead. "A year and a half ago, I had given up on love. I thought that part of my life was over, that I'd had my chance and lost it, and that the best I could hope for was survival. Then you showed up, soaking wet and shattered, and everything changed." He paused, gathering himself. "You taught me that it's never too late to start over, that the deepest connections often come from the most unexpected places, that two people can save each other just by showing up and staying." His voice cracked slightly. "I promise to show up every day, in good times and bad, in health and sickness, in success and failure. I promise to love you without conditions and fight for you without hesitation. And I promise to always, always have marshmallows." Laughter rippled through the guests. Emma's voice rose above it. "Tiny marshmallows! The tiny ones are the best!" They exchanged rings. They were pronounced married. And when Logan kissed his bride, the small crowd erupted in cheers that seemed to fill the whole blue sky. The reception was everything a celebration should be. Food and dancing and speeches that alternated between heartfelt and hilarious. Karen Whitfield told the story of the board meeting that had changed everything. Maya's mom admitted she'd been wrong about Logan being too shy. Emma gave a toast that involved a complicated metaphor about marshmallows and family that made everyone cry. As the sun set and the fairy lights came on, Logan found Vivian standing alone at the edge of the dance floor, watching their guests with a soft smile. "You okay?" he asked, slipping his arm around her waist. "Better than okay." She leaned into him. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for the other shoe to drop. But it just doesn't. Maybe we've had enough things go wrong. Maybe the universe decided we'd earned some happiness." "That's not very scientific." "I'm a numbers guy. I don't have to be scientific about everything." She laughed, and the sound was like music, like coming home, like every good thing Logan had ever hoped for condensed into a single moment. "Dance with me?" she asked. "Always." They moved together on the dance floor, slow and close, while the music played and the stars emerged and their guests gradually drifted into smaller conversations and quiet celebrations of their own. "I need to tell you something," Vivian said quietly. "What's that?" She pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes with an expression he couldn't quite read. "I'm pregnant." The world stopped. Logan stared at her, his brain struggling to process the words. Pregnant. She was pregnant. They were going to have a baby. "I found out this morning," Vivian continued, her voice trembling slightly. I was going to wait to tell you, but I couldn't. Not today. Not when we're starting our official life together. Her eyes searched his face. Are you happy? I know we hadn't planned it, and we've only been together a year and a half, and there's so much uncertainty. He kissed her. Kissed her until she stopped talking, until her questions dissolved into certainty, until she could feel exactly how happy he was without him having to find the words. Emma's going to be a big sister, he said when they finally broke apart. She's going to be impossible about it. You know that, right? She's going to have opinions about everything. Vivian laughed through her tears. She's going to be amazing. She really is. They held each other on the dance floor, two people who had found their way through darkness into light, now facing a future brighter than either of them had dared to imagine. Around them, the party continued, music and laughter and love, the sounds of a community celebrating a union that had seemed impossible not so long ago. And in the quiet space between songs, Logan whispered into his wife's ear the words that had been building in his heart since the night she'd appeared on his doorstep, broken and desperate and beautiful. Thank you, he said, for knocking on my door, for trusting me with your broken pieces, for staying when you could have run, for choosing me, choosing us, choosing this. Vivian pulled back to look at him, her face luminous in the fairy lights. You saved me, she whispered. Logan shook his head, pulling her close again, thinking of all the nights and days that had led them here, all the choices and chances and moments of courage. No, he said softly. We saved each other. That night you didn't just knock on my door, you opened a whole new life. And as they swayed together under the stars, surrounded by the family they had built and the future they had earned, Logan Hayes knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where he was meant to be. Not a CEO and an analyst, not a single father and a corporate refugee. Just two people who had chosen love over fear, hope over safety, each other over everything else. The midnight knock had become a lifetime. And the lifetime was only just beginning.